Sins of fathers, everybody. Sins of fathers. Buy it. Anyway,
Bless
sorry.
you. Instruct the mind from the heart that you have a value, that you're worthy. Top of the league, premier criminals.
If you have a lack of purpose, you will divert from what you're meant to be doing.
Absolutely.
Which is,
I miss you, Dad.
how many tons was it?
Well, they say there's 4.5 tons.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're 4.5 ton.
Yeah.
Which is quite. You wouldn't want it falling on you. So, on a boat. I think I told you we had it in cod, and they called the old man the cod father. He didn't like that. The dysfunction, the unease, the trauma of the sex abuse. There's a proof of healing. We're all human beings, and we all deserve love. And there's so much money out there; it's all ridiculous. Trust me, when I go up there, I will leave this place happy. Thought about escaping once because I had a chance. We're in this chapel, and they've all looked at him, and you could see he was gone. I think I've had 9 lives, Mike. He ain't a bad-looking boy, Michael, is he? I bet the birds like him and all, didn't they? You got a fan club, Mike?
It's not something we can talk about on camera, mate.
Okay, all sorry. That's why I believe in God. To do 33 stretch was a liberty.
Just one question I'll ask for the recording at least.
How big was my dad's?
Yeah.
Thank
My
you,
pleasure.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bless you. Bless you, son. Wow.
Okay, our sponsor for this episode is SpaceMade. SpaceMade offer flexible workspaces throughout the UK, and they currently have the following London locations: Queen's Park, The Strand, Fitzrovia, Swiss Cottage and London Fields, as well as City Centre Leeds and City Centre Bristol. To find out more, do check out their website at www.spacemade.co. And finally, I would like to give a big thank you to the whole team there. I really am grateful for your support you've given us from day one, and it really won't be forgotten. If you are looking for a great space to work, guys, do check them out via the links in the description below. And for any direct inquiries, you can email them via info@spacemade.co. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Yeah,
So go on, tell us quickly. So that was the point. Just maybe elaborate now that we've got the camera on. But what do you like really want from all of this? Like now that it's out, now that it's going well, what do you really want from all of it?
So it's the vision, yeah. So it may look like sort of celebrity style, yeah. And I seem to fit the bill. I don't want to be a celebrity. It's not.
I know what you mean, though. There is a certain character to you that fits the celebrity thing. I
think so.
Yeah.
But my story is not just about a born-again criminal, Christian criminal, hallelujah. It's not about that. What it's about, so I'll get to the vision because it's about my suffering and what I went through. Not because I went through the criminal life. I'm talking about the dysfunction, the unease, the trauma of the sex abuse. They say that that youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
And
I love that phrase.
It's a great phrase because it's real.
Because you don't. Yeah. It's basically saying you don't know what you're doing, and so you just float around in the midst of it. But that's the irony of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. But isn't it lovely, the innocence of it? But children are very, very bright. Yeah. That's why I love my grandchildren so much.
Well, they're instinctive as well. They're not cognizant in a negative way. They're
Great words.
They're just completely
Absolutely.
at the forefront of their living self, of their being.
Absolutely, and it's beautiful. So it's very important what you sow into that. My ignorance, I didn't know with my own children because basically I wasn't very well. So my heart was always right because I knew what was right for my kids, but I had this crazy mind. I didn't choose it. I didn't ask for it. It was mine. And the dysfunction of not being wired properly. So the confusion in the mind to the beauty of the heart, it was the yin and yang, it was the opposite, it was the God and the devil, it was the light and the dark.
It's like we said last time, it's the duality of your brain itself, which is but so you're saying like the dysfunction, why why do you start to talk about the dysfunction when you talk about the bigger image or the bigger mission? Is that because you're trying to show the dysfunction and what can come out of it?
Yeah, there's a proof of healing, Michael. There's a proof of change. And from my experience, the amount of time I've took to achieve that, I could help to make people's lives, not because I'm anything special, but I know the shortcuts. Although shortcuts aren't great, but instead of going round the houses like the 40 years in the desert, should have taken them for 2 or 3 weeks to achieve that in the desert. Took them 40 years. I'm similar, because it was hard for me to be obedient to life, obedient to love. Not obedience with a stick. Obedience can conjure up very many sort of different facets in one brain. Obedience is like, obedience can be an ugly word or a beautiful.
Well, it indicates submissive, really. Which is not what it's about. You're actually not being submissive. You're not being subservient to your own life. You're actually doing the opposite. You're pushing out of it.
Correct.
Which is something we've talked about a lot with entrepreneurs, believe it or not. Yeah. Which is interesting. But go on. So obviously you're trying to show I guess the light that comes out of the dysfunction. But what you mentioned before off camera about actually creating a home. So what is the sort of tangible things you'd like to do?
Okay, so that's great. So if we can do step by step, and we've got to be careful of the ego and the pride. It's not about look at me. It's about what is the vision? What does this mean? And we know that money's important, not the love of money. Yeah, mammon can be dangerous. You can't love money and love God, in my opinion, because they don't work. But God doesn't dislike money.
And money is a tool.
It's absolutely a tool.
It's a vehicle to create things that matter, unfortunately. But or fortunate, whatever it is.
I think it's fortunate if you put it if you put the right aspect on money. And you know, you don't love money, but you respect it. And money's caused wars, divorces, killing. Money's caused so many evil things. But if you look at money the way it's, in the Bible, it says give to the tax man what's the tax man's, and give to God what's for God, and use it wisely and be a steward with it. So to be a steward, it means to look after something. You steward something. So I would like to create something that's fun, something that people can enjoy, and something that people can say, hold on, I've got that dysfunction. Because it's not all like doom and gloom, because there's a lightness to it. But wherever you join the journey of Sins of Fathers, whether it's for fun, because it's a villain story, whether you join it because you have a faith, or whether you join it because you're struggling, we can deal with all of that. But the end product, the vision, the Bible says, write it down and it will tarry. But believe it by faith that it will come to pass. So, and I don't want to get too biblical, but so the vision is to create a book, a film, a documentary, or whatever we're doing, but to create platforms for the mental health, addiction, prisoners, working farms, children's holiday homes for inner city kids who are suffering at the hands of the perils of the addiction of the parents, and that's not to judge parents.
Yeah.
Mainly, I'd love to open or be part of opening up. This has been my vision for a long time. I love it. It gets better. Well, it changes as I get older. But to create a holiday home for inner city kids, you take them on a holiday home, whether it's been, I don't know, Devon's always been, or down in France, and they have a holiday away from the screaming noise, away from the addictive parents, and bless the addictive parents, away from the fatherless kid, the motherless kid, the different races. There's there's no race or colour we're all human beings, and we all deserve love and actionable love. So I'd love to create a home where they can go horse riding. They can have. They can learn sewing. They can learn the computer. They can learn to swim or play football or react to kindness. And I just would like to build a holiday home for them kids, and then communicate with them afterwards with specialised people who can communicate at Christmas, at birthdays. You know, if they need school uniforms, and just make them part of the community that we're trying to create.
So you're really thinking piece of land, holiday cabins,
That's it.
a place for people to learn, work, whatever it is, and find alternatives, maybe at childhood level, so they don't go down the wrong track. Or,
Correct.
And then on top of that, you were talking before about trying to help sort of people with mental health problems and prostitutes and addicts. So is that another type of that sort of scenario? Essentially, like you said again, building a piece of land where you can come, I guess it's about you directing the movement and the thought process, really, isn't it?
Well, I think the vision's the vision, and you've got to have experienced people to come alongside you. But that seems to happen if you're doing good.
Yeah.
So it's about raising the funds.
Yeah.
It's about me going out sharing my experience, strength, and hope. But in that, for the prisoners, what I'd love for the prisoners is I'd like to open farms where they come and leave prison. There's a community.
So that's what you meant by working farms. People can work there, live there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And spend a year or two, or create a community where they learn to cultivate. You know, plant things and farm things, and just to sort of get the value of, you know, God says, "I bless the works of your hands," and I think that gives them self-belief. If they're insecure or feel bad about themselves, you know, I think achievement for all of us as human beings makes us grow as a person.
Purpose is everything.
No, absolutely. And
sometimes purpose is the root. If you have a lack of purpose, you will divert from what you're meant to be doing.
Absolutely.
Which is
guidance, Mike. So that's for the prisoners. The addicts, I'd like to. I might be going above my station here, but I don't think I am. These places where people are coming out of prison or in recovery, it's all places that are safe, Michael. That, you know, my addicts can come and spend 6 months there in their recovery stage, and maybe do some work or just get well, Mike. And another thing that touched me later on in life was when my father was in a home for the dementia, and he was blessed to be in the home he was in. There was a kindness there. But when I used to sit there, I thought, how could I improve this place? And so it was about funding. There's so much money out there. It's all ridiculous. People buying big boats and, you know, these big Russians, not knocking them, you know, giving 10, 50, 100 million pounds or whatever they give for a boat. Can you imagine if these care homes for dementia and it's a torrid illness, it eats them away. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to have, for me, nice Christian music in the back or soul-searching music, because they respond to music, the dementia people.
Yes, they very much do. It's quite fascinating. That.
Yeah.
I've seen amazing videos of this. I mean, you'll love this. I'll show you afterwards. But this ballet dancer, she was this amazing ballet dancer, but really suffered from dementia, and she's in a wheelchair sadly, but they gave her really intense headphones, and it played Swan Lake or something like that, and you just saw her like completely come alive and start moving her arms, and it, like she was dancing. It was one of the best things I've ever seen.
Absolutely. No, it's true.
It's quite touching, actually.
When I used to go down to my dad's home, once a month they used to have a fella come in and sing all the old songs, you know, maybe it's because I'm a Londoner. And because the age group, sort of, they were war babies, so they used to play Vera Lynn's and all that sort of stuff. And the fun that they used to have, and I've got it on video, loads of them, and I used to look around the room, and they can't even remember their names, some of them, and they would start singing, get up and dance. And I thought, could you imagine if this setting, and they'd done very well in the care home of my father's down in Reigate, they were beautiful. But you've got to have some sort of patience and love. It's a job you're called to. It's not a job you apply for, because that's
a good way to put it, actually.
Yeah,
I do think carers it's so selfless. It's amazing.
They're amazing people. So, and I just don't want to harp on the Christian stuff and things like that, because there's lots of beautiful people out there. But for me, it would be, you don't have to have a Christian care home, but I would like to have that godly ambience, not religion, not like let's all pray and it's all holier than thou. But I just think that the sense of peace and love that comes out of faith-believing people, listen, not all faith-believing people are terrific, but some of them are, or just nice people who do that job. And I just think that I would make their life easier, the staff. Yeah, I would make it worth their while. And then it doesn't become about how much it costs. It becomes about how blessed we are to do it. And if you look at it like that, I think the sort of financial funds for those things, it drops out the sky. So that's the vision, Mike. So the care homes, and I'm not saying let's turn it into a church. I'm just saying you
really want to create facilities that help people when it comes down to it, but you'd like to put your own stamp on it.
I think so, but not stamp it. But
and obviously that's the point about using all of this as a platform to raise money and probably make your own money and so on and so forth.
And make my own money. I'm not doing everything for the goodness of. So and also the last thing of the vision is this. So you've read the book and you know it's about
sins of fathers, everybody. Sins of fathers, buy it. Anyway,
bless you.
Sorry,
bless you,
it's all right. I had to do that at one point.
That's great.
So the final part of the vision is what you're saying.
So the sins of the fathers is a forefather problem that I've had with my grandfather and my dad. I wouldn't say they was the problem. I would say that I don't want to get into it too deeply, but they say the ancestral sin. Yeah. So, God, I needed that. I felt like I had a percolated coffee in my mouth.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate that.
So, the sin of the forefathers is a hand-me-down trait. Name it what you like. You ain't got to call it the sins of the forefathers. Name it what you like.
Yeah, I remember you touched on this when we were walking down Portobello.
Yeah. You
do think it's generally very inherent. It's not.
Yeah, because I've had proof that it is. Otherwise, I wouldn't be shouting from the rooftops. If I'd just read it and went, "Oh yeah, maybe," people call it DNA, hand-me-down behaviour, or whatever they call it. It doesn't matter what you call it. I just have evidence. So I speak from evidence, not from knowledge of someone else. So what the vision for me would be, the dynasty, would be that my grandchildren's children benefit. That, I get emotional when I think about it. I never ever want any of them to have to go into a prison and be sentenced. I never want to see one of them on drugs. I want to be able to, and they've got their parents to guide them, so I'm not taking over here. But if I get the spirit right, let's just say, because I think things can be broken, the narrative can change. So if you create a space for, let's say, what I would like to do, for my children's children, that it's their nature to wake up Christmas morning and go to a homeless shelter and feed the homeless. I'm not saying they can't have nice lives and go skiing or ride horses or visit beautiful countries or have a nice home. This is not about being a do-gooder, right? This is about expressing the love that life has shown us. Because I never ever want them to feel what I felt. I'm a miracle that I can sit and talk to you. I said that before. I had no concentration level. I wasn't well at all. But because I looked the part and sounded the part, a little bit like I am now, but inside of me right at this moment, I feel okay. Whereas before...
You don't want any family or people in general to have that deep dissatisfaction and confusion that you have.
No, not at all. Yeah. And I think that's the key for me. So that's I wouldn't call it a fight, because it doesn't, that puts a different sort of edge to it. It's, I I would call it a love. I would call it an action. I would call it a verb to do. And if I can do that, trust me, when I go up there, I will leave this place happy. So I'm now. It was funny. I was sitting talking to my ex-wife today. Beautiful Tracy, the Rock of Ages, they call her. Incredible lady. I wish I'd have known about what I know about her today. I wish I'd have known earlier. But I said to her, do you know what it feels like, Trace? It feels like that the old life has gone and I'm using the old life to manifest a new life. So if I have to leave people behind, it feels like...
It's not an issue to shrug it off.
No.
Does it even feel like you? When you look back, it does sit with you. It doesn't feel so far gone that it's almost like not you.
Being a criminal wasn't me. That was my mind. That was the impression of the counterfeit story that I was introduced to.
Yeah, but the chaos was you.
The chaos came to me, and I created more chaos and more chaos and more chaos because that's what my mind done. I'm not saying it wasn't my responsibility, but I didn't have the mind of let's think of Nicky Gumbel, who runs the Alpha course at the church I go to, Holy Trinity Brompton. And I'm not saying his mind's perfect, but I think he's got a wonderful mind, because he's used his mind for the right reasons. I think the mind, as we said in the past, is for practical. Well, mine wasn't. The practical mind I had was have sex with women, sorry women, because I love you, tell lies because I wanted to get away with crime, and it affects your being. So the mindset for me today, which is changing for me, and now I can work from my heart and my spirit and my soul, this is something that I think has been my destiny. Yep. So it was in there for a long time.
Do you I think that the battle inside your mind was obviously very tough, and I think people battle every day, and I think people don't understand that is a constant battle. People think they can just flush it out.
No, you can't.
And I mean, I just wondered if you could elaborate on that. Like, what if you could give any advice to someone who's really battling? For me, I always say just understand that it's never as such going away. But the beauty of it is once you enjoy yourself, it has a certain release, and you have this internal feeling that's beautiful. I just wondered if there was any advice about. My point being is, you told us a story which we won't mention today, where the old Michael could have come out, but you reminded yourself. Is there any other advice you'd give on that point about that internal battle?
So I think if I revert to the Bible, and this is not a biblical lesson because it's up to you what you do, but the Bible says in Romans, and I've used this a lot, and it's in Romans 12:2, and it says, if you read my word, I will transform your mind according to my will. So let's take that out of the Bible. So what that's saying is, if you use your mind for the correct things, i.e. study, i.e. whatever you use your mind for, my mind was used for how many drugs I can have. Sitting there with the horrors, thinking about, does he like me or not? And the brain is such a beautiful thing if it's looked after. When it becomes sort of dysfunctional, any word you want to use, it then just floods you with sort of behaviours and words, and then you start to dislike yourself. And I think to build one's confidence up, and confidence not to be brash or arrogant, but my advice is use your mind for what God what God gave it to us for. And I think it's to learn. And I think if we start to learn and use it for what it's meant to be, I think it starts to change. But there's not only that changes. I think to clear the mind, to meditate, to pray, and to instruct the mind from the heart that you have a value, that you're worthy. that you, and so let your heart sort of be who you are. And I think when we speak from our hearts, which is love, it sort of activates the brain. I think the brain, when you start giving yourself maybe a pat on the back or embrace, be kind to yourself, I think the brain really activates.
Yeah.
It thinks, God, I ain't got to keep thinking about, oh, look at that pretty bird's ass, or look at that, or look at this, and how much money has he got? Because it's a story that's going on in your head that you've created because you don't believe in yourself. Sorry about your mics.
Don't worry.
I don't want to break them. They look quite expensive.
Do you think the core of all addiction, bad behaviour, is insecurity at the heart of it?
I think it's part of it, Mike, but it's not only insecurity. I think, what do I think about addiction? I think it's fear-based.
What do you mean?
Lack of faith. So
Lack of faith in oneself, beyond anything else.
I don't know if it's oneself. I think faith to believe something is good's going to come.
Right, okay.
So, you know, people call it positive thinking, that man, that Eckhart Tolle is his name.
Eckhart Tolle, yeah.
So I've listened to him and I think he's incredible. I would give that a right G, I would. I would say people should look at that. Whether you believe in it or not, I think he stimulates the brain not to activate the heart. So addiction for me is powerful. If we get addiction and love it and generate it into the right areas, we can be very special because it's a drive. But if we allow it to take over by being fearful about everything, yeah, even about a conversation, even about what does he think about me? Am I good enough? It just creates fear because if you don't think you're good enough, you're fearful. Anyway, so I think it's fear-based, and it's a very special thing, addiction. Like I just said, you can really use it to benefit rather than destroy you. I think addicts are really strong people. I really do, because what we have to go through is incredible. How I can sit here and talk to you and be alive is amazing. So I think it's fear-based. And I think fear, because we want to combat fear and we don't know how to, we pick up behaviours like control, lust, greed, and they're all figments of your imagination, and they've come from the pit of the fear. That's how I think.
No, I'm with you in many ways. I think the control one, the desperate need to be in control, is very dangerous. But at the same time, you have to understand that everything is within your own grasp. On the flip side, when you talk about fear, control outwardly to try and control other people is dangerous. But understanding you have control of yourself and you have that true, it is within your own grasp to control it. And because some people, I think, when they're addicts, they think it's out of their control. They think it's just who they are. And I think that's
true.
That's a fascinating, again, duality. It's like, do you believe in the 12-step program? Is it the 12-step?
Very much so. I think it's a great program.
Is that what helped you a lot?
It has helped me, Mike. I mean, I think if you go through the 12-step program I think it's been very clever the way it's been sort of wrote and given, because it has stages, and the first stage is surrender. We think surrender's weak, but surrender's strong. So we surrender and hand something over, and then we do an inventory on ourselves for people we've harmed, and we make an amends. So that's clearing the debris. Sorry's a chuck away word. I think sorry's an action.
Yeah, that's the one that I always wonder about. You know, you have to clear the qualms or whatever you want to call it with everyone. Surely to some extent you have to accept your mistakes. I know some people literally write lists of hundreds of people and call them all up and say I'm so sorry. I don't see that. I think that's too self-deprecating. I don't see that as an advancement forward.
Well, I think it helps if you've done it.
I haven't been there. To me that seems like the one where I'm like, well.
Well, it's not only that.
Yeah.
You know, when you make an amends to someone, they may have hurt you as well, and you're expecting them to say, you want them to make an amends to you, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But I think once you verbalise it, it seems to take it away. You've put it out there. But a real amends is when you change. So if I made an amends to you because I stole your wallet, yeah. So, and I said, listen, Mike, I nicked your money. It was me who stole your wallet. Can you forgive me? And you might struggle with that. But my amends to me is that I've said sorry, but I don't do it again. That's where the amends takes power. When you've said sorry and I stop stealing your wallet or Sammy Boy's wallet, I've made an amends to myself. So what that does, it makes me feel better about myself. I know a little story with a fella, yeah? And this will explain it a lot better than I can explain it, maybe. So he moved into this house and he was getting clean off of heroin, yeah? It was a story told to me in a meeting, and they say, you know, don't share it, but it was 10 years ago, or maybe longer. So he moved into this place, this halfway house, and right across from where his room was, there was a disabled man there, yeah, who he got on really well with, and they become friends. So the disabled man used to say, can you go and get my shopping? He said, yeah, of course. So he'd go and get the geezers, this guy's geezer, go and get this fella's sort of money off him, or go and get his pension out or his disability allowance. And he'd go to the shop. And the geezer used to say, yeah, I want eggs, bacon, tomatoes, or whatever he used to buy, his tea, his coffee, his cigarettes, whatever. And he used to take it back to him, and he was really cool. And he really started to like himself. Yeah? Then he relapsed. Yeah. And what took over wasn't the kindness of the man or the kindness of the relationship or let me help. What kicked in was, I need that man's money for my heroin. Yeah. So he never took it all, but instead of spending, say it's 100 quid, instead of spending the man's shopping on whatever, he would go out, buy his heroin, steal the man's food in Tesco's or wherever he used to steal it from. Sometimes it'd be, he didn't have that, but I've kept the money and I'll get it for you tomorrow. It started to lie to the man. He was deceitful. The man died. Sorry, he left the house and he stole the man's money. Yeah. When he got clean again, he went back to make his amends to the guy. He got clean again. But the guy had died. Yeah. So he couldn't make the amends. So what he done, he gave himself to a project where like-minded people, that man's condition, whatever it was, disabilities, he went to work for a charity, I think, for a number of months. And he then supported the charity financially. And for him, that was making his amends. So that's meaningful. He didn't have to do it. No one knew that he'd stolen that fella's money. So it's not a cop-out on amends. It's quite powerful. But it's maintaining the value of sorry by action. So like I say, if I stole your wallet and said, Mike, I'm really sorry, and then I flew downstairs and there was a wallet downstairs and I nicked it, that amends to you is just shit. So it's about self-preservation. It's about starting to love oneself. Not, oh, I look good, I've got a nice suit on. That's not loving oneself. It's about maintaining the blessing that we've been given as a gift from God. Human beings.
Do you drink?
Do I dance?
Do you dance? Do you dance? I bet you do dance, first of all.
I wasn't a bad dancer, actually.
I bet you were.
I've got some funny stories.
Do you drink
about
ever?
that. No.
Have you? When's the last time you had a drink?
This May, 22 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it still a battle?
No.
You don't have a craving for anything anymore?
No, I couldn't even be bothered. One day, I was out with a girl, it was dishonest, and I was at a table in a very small Thai restaurant, and there was they was drinking white wine and soda, or whatever they was drinking, and Perrier or something like that. But I was drinking Perrier, and I was sitting with this girl, and accidentally, I picked up her glass like that. I think it was mine. I took a sip like that, and excuse me, my throat's a bit sticky, and it was the white wine. But where I had the glass to my mouth, and I realised what I'd done. Cheekily, I finished half of it and put it down. And I went, oh my God. So that was about 12 years ago.
Okay.
So it wasn't a relapse, but I must admit, the sensation of the warmth to the chest, I thought, oh. I said, listen, I've drunk a bit of your wine. They went, oh, no. But for me, I tell you what, I've had a drink. I mean, at my wedding, I got a mate of mine to go out to south of France. I had a really sort of ex-criminal's wedding. It was superb. So it was. If the devil,
I wish I was there.
If the devil could, I'll show you some photos.
Yeah.
So I got married because I'd already been married, and I had to, Mickey's getting married.
Because you got married in prison, didn't you?
Yeah, to Daniela, beautiful Daniela, the angel of my life. She weren't the only one, girls, but there was always been something special about women, and Daniela had a quality that I will never forget, and it's beautiful. I respect the input she put into my life was beautiful, but my wedding was, excuse me, I'd already been married, so I had to only have the blessing. I wasn't allowed to. So the church I was involved with, they said, look, go to Chelsea Registry Office and, bless you, Tracy, and we're allowed the wedding to take place at Holy Trinity Brompton, but without the registrar in the corner. Do that, and you can have a full-blown wedding. Got about 200 or 300 people turned up. And we were sort of popular, and there was a Christian guy there. I'll tell you his name. He's a very special man. Was a guy called Nigel Skeltsy, and he was the pictures editor of the Sunday Telegraph. But in that wedding, there was there was 2 professional photographers. I didn't ask them to do this. They took it on their own back, but neither one of them knew they was doing it. And they presented me with a photo album. You're talking about proper. One of them is Jack, who films all the films. He worked with Ray Winston. He worked with all that sort of. What was that wonderful film? Neil by Mouth. With Ray Winston, Jamie Foxx. It was about an addict. If you haven't seen Neil by Mouth,
I don't think I have.
Oh, you got to watch Neil by Mouth.
Yeah.
So he was on that set. I don't want to name drop, but Jack's a lovely boy. He works with, a number of stars, Gary Oldman and all that, and he takes superb photographs. You know that Ray Winston thing in my front room.
Yes.
And the 2 on the wall.
Yeah.
With Eric Clapton and the drummer out of Rolling Stones. So that's the sort of stuff he does.
Okay.
And a mate of mine employed him for that day to take wedding photographs. He took them all in black and white. They were first class. Nigel Skeltsy from the, from the Sunday Telegraph, he done it as well. So I had amazing photographs. The flat, because I was in the flower industry, the guy I worked with in Holland, and I wasn't smuggling drugs with him, the old Bills thought I was when I went in the flower game. I'd 5 flower shops in London, buying a 20 or 30 grand's worth of flowers. They was convinced I was using it for drug runs, and they started to follow me. I found it quite amusing, actually. I really did. There was foreign the vehicles about, and it was flowers. So the guy I used to work with, a guy called Case, when I was getting married, he sent over about 7 grand's worth of flowers, which is quite a lot of flowers. And there was only 4 or 5 different flowers that my ex-wife Tracy had ordered. Grand Prix roses, and there was all sorts of flowers that they had. And he never charged me for it. So the flowers that I had at my wedding, it was like a royal wedding. And you remember I had 5 or 6 flower shops. I used to employ about 20 girls, and I had the best girls in London. So the flowers, it was like unbelievable, the flowers. I mean, I'll show you some photographs. And I'm not showing off, it's just my truth. So the wedding was set, Then we went to the Conrad Hotel in Chelsea Harbour. Arsenal football team turned up there. So there was a few celebrities there.
Did you mention this in the book?
I think I might have done.
Yeah. Because this was... Were you still in prison at this point?
No, that was Tracy's.
That was Tracy's
40th birthday.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think people would be fascinated the fact that when you're edging out of prison, it's almost like a hotel, right? You
It ain't like an hotel.
Sorry, that's a terrible way to put it. Actually, you're totally right. What I mean is, you're allowed to go out every day.
You're allowed to go to work.
Yeah,
and you should. I mean, look, whatever goes on, you know. And a lot of people go to work, yeah, and whatever people do, they do. But you all, whatever. But what it is about going out to work and going back to prison of a night time, it's probably harder bird, that means prison sentences, than when you're locked up. Because when you're locked up, you know what you're doing from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you go to sleep. So you learn a routine. So your day ends at 8 or 9 o'clock. You want to be asleep by 9, 10 o'clock. Excuse me. So, and you do your bird by seasons when you're doing a long time. And listen, I didn't do all the prison sentences. A lot of people done a lot more than me. But I was very blessed to get out after nearly, just under 5 years, I think it was. I've done about 6 years in prison in all. You know, I could have been away for 10 or 12 years, easy. And so you get used to it. A guy said to me who'd been in prison for a long time, he went to me, the first 18 months is the hardest. And he was right. Because you've got the street, the love, the children, they're all here. And as you walk in, you change your suit, really. You change your... We're creatures of habit. Yeah? So without us knowing it, this is why the brain's incredible.
yeah.
The brain will activate what's going on around it. I mean, it's amazing, the brain.
It's adaptable.
Very much so.
Yeah.
That's why I think we should really look after it. So after 18 months in the nick, you start to realise that the only responsibility you've got maybe is to turn your light off of a night time or to, because everything's done for you.
Well, so when you are doing that bit where you go to work every day, come back,
It's hard.
it's really hard, yeah.
Well, because you get up, you can't wait to go out to work. Then you're out on the streets working. And then all of a sudden, all of your mates are going out for dinner or they're going home to your families or what they're doing. And you're going back, although you're going back to sleep, it's still that, oh. And I think for a little while it's not bad. But my prison sentence for me, like I say, people have done a lot more, people I know. You know, I want to talk about someone I know, actually, who I never put in the book. He's a family member of mine. And he's... I'd like to mention that later. Remind me to.
No problem.
So, yeah. So you go back and you think to yourself, oh, and the days seem longer. The time seems longer. And you feel like you're home, but you're not. And then you have to go back to a routine where people tell you, get in there, do. I mean, they're not so bad in the open nicks, but you're still being told what to do, or not even being told. The suggestions are you follow the rules. And us prisoners, I think we don't make life easy for the prison officers. Not because, you know, people might hate them and it's a war, but, you know, you don't want to make their life easy for them. And there's levels of that. You know, you can play up. I used to always play up to them. So I know some funny stuff, some hilarious stuff that's comical, and I'd like to share it, but I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But the shenanigans were cool, you know. They was harmful. They wasn't nasty, but they were good. But it's difficult when you've been out and go back to work, because if you do that for a year, it seems like 2 years. You think you're home. You know,
because it's a taste of freedom, but it's not real freedom, is it?
No, it's not real freedom. So that, for me, that prison sentence, that bit of the bird was harder than being...
What, than the actual general sentence? So what was it like sharing a cell with your dad?
Well...
Because I always wonder about it, because I know you clashed naturally, didn't you? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was 30... I was born in 1958, so when I was nicked in 93, how old am I, 35?
Yeah, 35, yeah.
35. My dad was born in 1930, I think it was 63, 64, something like that. No, he'd have been old. No, how old was Bry? He was born in 31, 93, what's the sum, Mike? seems sharp, son.
Be 64. 62.
So he's 62. I'm 34.
Yeah.
He's 62.
Is that right? You said 93 and he was born in 31?
Yeah.
No, 72.
No,
No, sorry, 62. Yeah,
62.
sorry.
He's
Yeah,
my age.
Keep that off camera. How bad that was.
Yeah. If he was alive, he wouldn't like it.
Yeah. He was 62. Okay.
So he's 62.
Yeah.
Now, he done 6 years, so he come out when he was 68. Yeah. And I think they're really important years. But listen, you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And my dad was very lucky. You know, my dad was staunch. He kept his mouth shut. And I think the disappointment from my dad that he got caught. He reigned for years. And he was targeted in the 80s and 90s. But I think the way he went to work, they found it very hard to arrest him and his co-defendant, this lovely guy, God rest his soul, both of you, Joe Parr. And they was what you feel villains were. You know, they weren't nasty. They never hurt people. But it was war. You know, so if you was in the fraternity, it was war. If you'd done anything wrong, you couldn't go to the police. You know, and it went with a turf. But so my dad had that sort of military attitude to crime. He was organised and disciplined. You had to be. I weren't. I was cavalier, but I was as game as a beagle. I didn't care. And so when we walked into the prison cell, he was very disappointed, obviously. One, we'd lost the money, and two, Exeter. we was very fortunate because we should have been Cat A prisoners on the book. So when we got taken to court, there was armed cops, a lot of them. Very intense it was. It was when they moved this, it was like moving the IRA. Bulletproof vests on them. It was all nonsense, to be honest with you. But they got a buzz out of it. But I think it was from the connections abroad what brought the intensity of the moving us about. Because there was 14 of us, we was going to Bristol, me and the 4 principal organisers. And Bristol was going to Bristol to be on the book, Cat A Prisoners. Which ain't a bad way to do your bird, actually. But, you know, I'm a life and soul of a party. I didn't want to be like that, but it was out of my hands. And it was funny because the vicar who became my friend, Bill Burwood, he retired from the prison service a little while ago, and I went to a dinner, and I sat next to him, and he went to me, Michael, I don't know how you stayed in Exeter prison. He said you was going escorted armed to Bristol. How you never went there?
So Exeter's what? Cat B.
Cat B.
Cat B, right? Which means what?
Well, it's just down from Cat A. So, but I mean, it's secure. It ain't like
It's not as intense as.
No.
Yeah.
You're allowed to wear sort of. Yeah, there is a difference, but I wouldn't say it's a big difference, but there's a difference. And I think the Cat A prisons, there's more respect between the prison officers and the prison because I think they respect that these people are dangerous and they're doing their bird. And, you know, so your job is to lock them up and just make sure they're secure. And there's dangerous people in the Cat A systems. You know, they're what you call hardened criminals. But so me and Dad, we had a touch. And the first night we went in the cell, there's 17 of us. And I'd just come back from Marbella. I was all lovely and brown. I was all dressed up nice. It weren't the intention to be in Exeter prison. And it was very old. It was a Victorian prison, but really old prison it was. And suicide blue colour it was painted. And I think it was a retiring post for... So the prison officers were quite all right. They had a few years to go. They didn't want any ag. And I think... when you go to a prison like that, and I'm not saying I'm a celebrity, but they think you are. You know, it's on the news or on the TV. It was the biggest importation of cannabis at the time. I think it's been beaten now. And
How many tons was it?
Well, they say there's 4.5 tons.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're 4.5 ton here.
Yeah.
Which is quite. You wouldn't want it falling on you. So, you know, on a boat. I think I told you we had it in cod, and they called the old man the cod father. He didn't like that. Bit fishy. So we walk into this cell, And it was a remand cell where they're in and out, in and out, in and out. So it wasn't in the best condition. You know, there was sort of bogies on the wall, whatever it was. They tried their best. So we walk in, and you got to remember we had nice beds at home, and we're walking into this sort of, it's like going in a plunge pool, and these beds are awful, but you can't be choosy. And the mattresses are about as thick as that table. You get one pillow and a very itchy green blanket and white sheets that have been so washed. And it's like starching them. You feel like you're putting a starched shirt on. And they're not long, the beds. My feet used to stick out the end. So we walk in there, me and the old man, and there's 17 of us. So we're all hustling to get cells. That's where I met Ian. And we go in this cell, and we're right by it opposite the recess. And the recesses don't smell too nice, Mike. It's where everyone sings their pony and their pee and, you know, vomit and all that. So there was no toilets in where I was on the remand wing. So we walk in there, and because they think we're villains, they're all coming up bringing magazines and books. And do you want any tea bags? Which is nice. And a kid come up and give us a magazine about the great train robbers, and they was all my dad's friends. He didn't want to see that, you know, because we hadn't been sentenced and they'd all done like Big Bird, and so the last thing he wanted to see was his mates who do. So he said, "Get rid of that effing magazine." I went, "All right." And he's making up his bed. He ain't spoke to me because I think he blames me. So, and he was only little, but you wouldn't want a right-hander off him. And he was little in height, not in thing. I miss you, Dad. Anyway, all of a sudden, he's turned around and looked at me. He hadn't said 2 words to me. So he'd gone through the emotional thing that I was his son. And the door went bang. The reality had hit home. And there was no way out. There was no way out. Well, maybe, but there weren't. And thought about escaping once because I had a chance. But that's another story. And he went, "Turn that radio on," and he was really being horrible to me, you know. So I thought I'd leave him. So I turned the radio on, and the song, literally, what come on was Chris Rea, "This Is the Road to Hell." I'm serious, as I turned the thing on. Yeah, and he snapped. "What have you effing done? I told you, you're nothing but a greedy bastard. I told you to slow down." It was the addict in me. So that was the first night. And then we, you know, he was pretty slippery, the old man. He got a good job straight away. And being the cannabis smuggler he was, he'd never smoked cannabis. He'd ate it once and it freaked him out and he wound up in hospital. They thought he'd have a heart attack. But I turned him on to the weed. Well, no, I never. This is quite a funny story. So there was an old boy on the landing who was nicked for 20 key a puff. He used to wear a wig, this fella. And he'd come across from Portsmouth. And he was nicked for like 20 key a puff. So he was an old hippie, you know. And he was about himself, but he used to shuffle along the landing, and he had one of the good jobs in the nick. He used to work in the officers' mess. And I knew he puffed. You get to know, because I was puffing. So you get to know. But I was holding, you know, I had what I wanted. And I don't mean that arrogantly, but I did. So, you know, I was involved with all the drugs dealers in London. So you get what you want. Not all of them, but you know what I mean. So cannabis wasn't a thing that I was worried I wasn't going to get. And you learn how to get it and do whatever you got to do. So all of a sudden, one afternoon, he's come in the cell, the old man. And he never used to be about in the afternoons, he'd slip about. So he's walked in the cell. And I'm a little bit dry from coffee. He was dry from cannabis. So you know you stop.
Yeah, you get the dry mouth, yeah.
He's licking his lips. So I've looked at him. He went, "We got anything to eat?" He's got the munchies. So I've looked at him. Now that ain't too old to have a puff at 63, but when you've never used it before.
It's late in the game, yeah.
So I've looked at him and I went, I can't remember what I said, but we've established that he's stoned. So I freak out. He's going to me, don't worry, son, I feel brand new. So that was it. We become cell partners in cannabis. He
Had a puff together
every night.
Yeah.
But he'd go, leave it to me, I. And the places he used to hide it was a lot better than I was. And he was so... And where he used to hide it, and then he'd cut a bit off so we had enough for the night, or he loved the skunk weed. Oh, he loved it. And of an evening, he got into his art, and then I used to get him really high, because I used cocaine in there a few times, and I had to get him stoned. And he used to have his glasses on, and in the end, where I'd load it up a little bit, he'd be like that, his glass, and he'd go, I'm all right. And then he'd start singing at the window Irish rebel songs. And the one I used to like, it wasn't an Irish rebel song, but I used to get him to sing it, and he used to be crying his eyes out. Is if you ever go across the sea to dear old Ireland, he'd be crying, whatever. So we should get stoned together. One day he decides to get married. Yeah.
Oh, I think you told me this.
What, with the crack?
Didn't you drug him basically?
Yeah, did I? Have you got that?
It's in the book.
No, it's not.
I'm sure it's in the book.
Don't think it is. Might be. Don't think it is.
You got a bit in the book. Anyway, go on.
So if I've told you, you've already got it.
Yeah.
But if I want, I done him. He was getting married.
This is so funny.
He's come out on his cell, and he went to me, listen,
Sorry. So just to clarify, if we do use it, so your dad was getting married, yeah?
Yeah. So my dad's getting married, but to a psychiatric nurse, and I think
obviously whilst in prison, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, he's in prison and he wants to get married.
Yeah.
But he thought it'd help his parole. So, bless you, Dad. So it's in. I forget. I don't remember what day it was. But he's all of a sudden I've looked at him, and he's got a pair of white. I've never seen these trousers before in my life. So she's bought them into him. He's got a white pair of linen strides on. Yeah. He never used to wear socks, my dad. He's got a lovely pair of sandals on. Like proper and lovely, give about 200, whatever he's given. Lovely sandals, like Gucci sandals or something. I've looked at him now. And he's got like this Vickers shirt on. It was olive green, but with a round neck. But it was silk. And I can't remember what I said, but I imagine I said, where are you going? You look like he was going down the beach in Marbella. He said, I'm getting married, don't you remember? So, okay. He said, do me a favour, or whatever he said. He said, roll me a little joint. And he's got into it. He's liking the feeling of it. So I went, all right, whatever I said. So next door to me was two little armed robbers. They were lovely fellas. Little Mickey and Ronnie. Great guys. And I don't want to get them in trouble. It's a long time ago. But they'd obviously been smoking a bit of crack. Yeah. So as I've run in their cell to roll him, and I used to roll him little, my mum would have killed me. I used to roll him little one joint, little one Skinners. And he'd only have about 6 puffs. And it would do him. So I knew how to sort of roll it. It wasn't a big old tobacco thing with, roaches in it. It was like a little roll up. Anyway, as I've looked down, it's only the size of a match head. But it was, and I knew what it was. And I don't know what possessed me to do it. I've put it in the joint. It's my dad, he's 64, and he's getting married. Crack and skunk. Terrible, right?
It's a heavy mix.
And I don't know if you've ever smoked it before. I know you haven't, you're a good boy, but I have. So I know that the high is a short hit high, and it does leave you after a while if you don't feed it. If you don't have more, because it's such a Moorish drug. And it's all right to say this on it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, so he's gone, I've put it in the joint, give it to him. Mickey's gone, you haven't put that in that joint, have you? Because they can smell it. And I think, what have I done? As he's put it down, they shout out, Emmett, Chapel. He's getting married. His wife's a bees in there. The chaplain.
Who's a psychiatric nurse.
Yeah, Roisin. She was a tough one. Irish lady. Bless you, Roisin. And they've called his name. So I've looked at him.
He can't talk.
Can't talk. His tongue is stuck in their mouth. And what happens, his silk shirt, it's like he's dived in a swimming pool. He's sweating, and he went, "What have you done to me?" I can't believe it. I mean, I've walked him along the landing. He's got the jaw. Mickey's gone, "My God, what have you done to him?" And the chapel from our cell is not too far away. If it was 10 yards, it was a long way. And I thought, no, I don't know what to do. But I've always fought on my feet. So I get in the room, and I'm not proud of this, but here's a funny story. I'll take him into the chapel. There's the chaplain there, and he would be upset with me, the chaplain, the governor, and his wife. And on the table is some drink, he'd never had cocaine in his life before, especially not crack. There was a big jug of orange, a teapot with a kettle and coffee and tea, and loads of cakes and biscuits. And there was a rock cake on there. And that's important to the story. So as I walk him in, we're in this chapel, and they've all looked at him, and you could see it was gone. So the governor said, "You all right, Brian, or whatever?" I said, "No, he's quite nervous." I said, "Because he's getting married." And Roisin went, "What do you mean he's nervous? This is his fourth time." He was married 4 times. So I've looked at him, he's in it, and he's staring at me with his mad eyes. So I see the rock cake. And I've been stoned out of my, and I'm not proud to say this, but there's always a moment when you flip out of your paranoia. Something can happen and you get straight away. You know, drugs ain't I'm not advocating drugs here at all, because they've been very dangerous for me. And I wouldn't like any of my children using crack. So forgive me. So I see the rock cake. I pick the rock and he in his mouth. So I've got his ooter and went, wallop. I've whacked the rock cake in his mouth. And as God would have it, as luck would have it,
if you ever go,
he started chewing his rock cake and falling out of his mouth, but he managed to get through it. He drank, I whacked the orange juice in him, and within minutes,
He snapped out of it.
he come round.
Yeah.
Thank the good Lord. And he went to me, "You wait." and we styled it out.
Oh, that's brilliant.
We styled it out. You can't.
Did he whack you?
No, he couldn't do that anymore. But
Yeah.
it was hard being in the cell with him. For 2 years, I was in the cell with him, and we had our moments. We had our fallout, especially over money. There was a chance that maybe he could get out of it, maybe I could get out of it. And it was a push-pull situation, because straight away my gallant heart said, "Listen, I'll get you out of this because you're 63. And then his gallant heart went, "No, you got 3 children, I'll get you out of it." So there was that going on, and then we both changed our minds. At times we hated each other, never stopped loving each other. A couple of times I had a couple of fights in there, and he's 64 years of age, and he'd turn up and want to fight. I'd say, "What are you doing, Dad?" I can look after. One day, I'll tell you a funny story with him, yeah, if you've got time.
Yeah, go ahead.
All of a sudden, I used to run a football. I mean, look, that was a sad, sick moment in the Nick. But there was a spiritual moment. There was a charity moment. We got Jimmy White or Ray Reardon to come down and play snooker. We got Samantha Fox to come in and present all the disabled kids with gear. And then I run a competition, a football competition, which was great. So I used to get everyone out of the wings. I presented medals and trophies. I was always at it. There was always something going on. We had some fun. And we really did have some fun, honestly. But nothing was bad. You know, it's probably the baddest story what I've just told you about the crack.
Yeah.
And it weren't, listen, it was a pinhead. It weren't like we were smoking it for 3 hours or 2 days or something. So we had the football. Anyway, there's a geezer in there. And it upsets me because his name was Paddy, because my grandson is Paddy, and I love my Paddy. And he was Scottish, this geezer. And he was the size of, he looked a little bit like Norman Wisdom, but he had muscles on him like that, he was. And he was really aggressive. And I'd sort of got into the faith after that. And I used to take a few Christians over with me, and he used to ridicule them, and they used to get a bit frightened of him. So I used to go round with the prison officer and get them all out for the football after tea at 6 o'clock, and going over the gym for 2 hours of an evening. It was like winning the pools. So they used to all wait at the door, and we had 4 teams. Ian had a team, I had a team, the YPs had a team, and a mate of ours, John, had a team. And it was the blues, the reds, the yellows and the greens. And we used to have interleagues. It was brilliant, it was. And I let it go on for months. Presented the trophies. Anyway, because Paddy had been nasty to this geezer called Wayne, I dropped him out. So as I've gone past his door, he's waiting there with his kit behind his door. And the prison officer's I said, no, not him this week. And he's heard me. So he went, well, I can't remember what he said. I must have said, "God, piss up," or something, and carried on walking. The following day, his cell was up on the 3s, and I was on the 2s, and his cell looked right over my cell. And there's a kid in that book called Bryn, beautiful man, who I hurt. He was my friend. I loved that boy, sadly. And so there was a guy who knew Bryn in there. And he was in the corner when what's his name, the fighter? Nigel Benn.
Nigel Benn, yeah.
Won the title.
Yeah.
And he was this lovely sort of kid, and he was built like he was a big boy. And so Bryn said, look after him. So he come and he used to, everywhere I looked, he was there. And he was a monster, this geezer. I'm with you, I know Bryn and all that. And he's in my cell having a cup of tea. So Paddy comes out of his cell, and as I walk across the landing to get the water, Paddy puts it on me about the football. So I didn't say anything. I just said, all right, Paddy, I'll see you later. As I walked back into my cell, this guy, Steve, said, you can't stand for that. He was from Liverpool, this guy. You can't stand for that. You got to belt him. Now, he was right. It's prison rules and regulations. You can't be humiliated. So I said, Steve, it's all right. I'll give him a pull when he's on his own. I'll do it quietly. Now you got to do it now. And he's got me at it. So as I walk out onto the landing, there's all these boys from Plymouth there, and Paddy's there. So I say to him, I can't remember what I say. In the recess, Paddy, we'll have a fight. So there's an old prison officer there. So I said to the old prison officer, there's no weapons. We're going to have a straightener. And he went, what's a straightener? The screw, the prison officer. I said, we're going to have a fight. I said, it's all right, just go away. It'll be a fair fight. He's run along the landing and he's hit the red bell. And he shouts over where the officer's mess is. I don't know, Brian's in the officer's mess. And he shouts over the landing, quick, Emmett's having a straightener. Right? He's copied me. All the prison officers run out to stop it. There's loads of them. They think there's going to be a bit of, whatever's going to happen. And my dad was in there with his mate who he used to have a puff with, drying the cups up, right? So he's run out when they said my name, but he's put the tea towel over his shoulder and forgot. You know, when they pull the tea towel off to do the cups. And all of a sudden, as I've looked down the stairs, there's about 10 prison officers running. And who's in the front of them? My dad with a tea towel. And I thought, oh, my God. And he's going, anyone hits my boy, as if I'm 7. Anyone hits my boy. So Paddy's looked. I'm running up the stairs. So we're going to have a fight. And the old man's come running up the stairs. And I think Paddy was frightened of me, Dad, and not me. Yeah. So I start arguing with my dad. You've embarrassed me. How dare you do it? Stop the fight. So that's what he was like with me.
Yeah.
He never stopped.
Yeah, never stopped protecting you either.
He had my back.
Yeah.
And I had his. But it was hard for 2 years.
Cool, so I bet it was.
Made them myself. I designed them myself. But
They're beautiful.
you like them?
Very much so.
Sam thought you take the piss out of me.
No, I quite like them.
They're a bit of fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
So go on, tell me a story about when your dad died, because you know what?
Let's get it on camera and film.
It's all on. It's all on.
Oh, okay.
You know what I was going to say to you? There's this I've got the quote somewhere. There's this bit that really stuck with me. Something to do with. I think it was the point of. I don't know if it was connected to your dad's death, but I think around when your dad died, that's when you realised love, so to speak. And I found it fascinating that you said how you learned to love your grandchildren were the first people you loved like effortlessly. Is that connected to the death to some extent?
I think
you think there was a release there or something.
I think I love my mum and dad with the same compassion that I love my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And my children, but because I never had any trappings when my grandchildren were born. The action of love was incredible. So that action filled my heart. So I unconditionally, for the first time in my life, look, when my children were born, I felt that love, but I wasn't well. So it became money, holidays, what I can buy them. But as I got older, and I'd lost everything, with the grandchildren, they were like a gift. So it began to open my heart. So I'm not saying I love my grandchildren better than I love my mum and dad and my children.
But it was so natural.
Oh,
There was
nothing there but
nothing.
love.
Yeah, you didn't have anything to prove, so to speak, like you said.
Absolutely.
Whereas before you were using other things, just buying stuff for them.
Well, because I couldn't connect. My heart wanted to, but my brain wouldn't allow it. Or my work wouldn't allow it. My being, my sex addiction wouldn't allow it. Or this wouldn't allow it. Or that wouldn't allow it. And so I lost that beautiful innocence with my kids. But it's really funny because it's like they've given me a gift. So it's a lot of grandparents will tell you this. But for me, I've got 7 incredible children. I don't favour one of them. I have a love that's very similar.
7 grandkids.
Yeah. And they're my life. This is what I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing it for. And this is what I'm doing it for, Mike. I want their lives to be beautiful. And it's not about money. That's part of it. It's about the peace, what we spoke about earlier, that there's a really peaceful, kind responsibility in being taught how to love people who are less fortunate. And then I think it becomes a character builder. Then I think it becomes a reality. It'd be like putting your shoes on in the end. You know, they wake up and think, oh, what have we got to do? And I'd love them all to be part of the vision. I don't know, God's got... He's put 7 children in front of me.
Do you think you're a lucky man?
With them?
Just in life? Overall?
Yeah, I am, yeah. I'm a blessed man. It's just understanding it and activating it. And it's about loving oneself. And I think these grandchildren started that journey for me. Self-love rather than ego pride. Look at me. I hate myself, but you're not going to know it because I'm going to put a mask on. They've given me that. I had some moments in my life, Michael. Sadly, when my Lily was born, I wasn't there. I was in prison. And when Beth was born, there was a hard situation going on. But when Amy was born, it was a natural birth, and I had this unbelievable natural love. When Lily was born, I had the same feeling. When Beth was born, I had the same feeling. Unconditional love. But I wasn't... Amy's was... The surroundings were beautiful. Lily, I was in prison. But I love my Lily. And I love my Beffy and my Amy. And that was the first taste I'd had of it prior to being a child from Jean. But you've got to remember, I was dysfunctional. I'd been abused. I'd had the forefather sin, which was really manifesting. But I believe God had a purpose for me from a very young age. But when they came along, a woman couldn't suffice. Sex didn't suffice. Money didn't suffice. Drugs never suffice. But when I met these grandchildren, I can't put it in words. It's not dramatic. It's not over the top. It's a reality. I mean, I honestly, I've never loved...
And it's so full, isn't it? It's so...
Beautiful.
Fills you up, yeah.
Yeah, it does fill you up. That's a great way of putting it. And I was with my Nancy at the weekend, and I've got 2 granddaughters, and we spoke to my goo out in Marbella, and they're just incredible girls. And it's not because they're attractive or they're smart or they're trendy. They've just got unbelievable energy. And it's like as if I could choose, I wrote a card to my granddaughter Gracie Goo when she was about 3. It was either a birthday card or Christmas card, and I put this in it. If God asked me what sort of granddaughter I would like, I would describe you. That was to Grace. And Nancy. And I meant it. It was, I suppose it's natural, Mike. I think it's a natural love. It's a natural, and it never weakens. It only gets stronger. I'm getting a bit disappointed because they're not babies anymore. My Paddy, I've got Paddy who's he's I think he's 13. I'm sorry, Pad. I hope you're not 14 this year because it'll blow me brains. And then I've got it goes Paddy, Nancy, Gracie. They're between 10 and 11. 12, I think, next year. Sorry, kids, they're going to get the hump about this. And then Teddy, my little Teddy. Then I've got Alfie. Then I've got Noland. So Alfie and Teddy's like he's a bit of a bruiser, but he's very beautiful to look at, and he's become a very kind, intelligent boy. Then you got Alfie, who's I adore my Alfie. He's a funny kid. He rules his home. He's naughty, kind, nice, dominant, but there's something really special. I say, how much you love me? And he says, 900, Pappy. They all speak well, my grandchildren. And, you know, they see me on a TV screen, on the front cover of a book. Yeah. But they've styled it out well. And then comes little Noland. And he's a very, very special little boy, this Noland. He was premature and a fighter warrior. Funny kid. And he lives in this little world, because when you love people the way I love and I'm not saying that my other grandparents don't love them the way, but you see things in them. And I don't have to be biased, because the qualities I talk about, they've got. So far, pray long may it continue. And then you got this little Noland, and he's just a character. He walks about dancing. He's funny, he's cheeky. And then the last one, I pray there's more, is this young kid called Freddie. He's got a mop of hair on him. Like he's never, women would die for this hair. And I sing a song to him. Ain't no mountain high enough. He goes rigid. And they found, I think I put the book up, the picture on Facebook, on Instagram. He found my book the other day. And he's...
Oh, I saw this, yeah.
And he wasn't given that book.
Yeah, he just picked it up. Yeah.
And there's a photograph before it that he's gone, oh, and then he's pointing at his grandfather. Mm-hmm. They don't call me grandfather; they call me Pappy. It's a gift, and that gift is godly, beautiful, not self-seeking. It's two-way. Great relationship, great friends of mine, and I'm honoured and blessed to say that I have got. They're gifts from God. I'm honoured and blessed to say that I've got seven wonderful, beautiful grandchildren. And it's not a figment of my imagination. It's not something I'm forcing. It's something that comes very natural. And a lot of grandparents say it, but I'm going to put it out there. Mine are blessed. Mine are blessed.
What's that? About when your father passed?
Yeah. So I suppose beautiful Sammy asked me how much you really love your dad. Mm. So it comes out in me now. But there was a time when I always loved him, I didn't like him, yeah? So that was a judgment on my behalf of him having left my mother. Mm. And he met a lady and he had another baby, and bless her, she's my sister. And, you know, he generally, I think, loved them. And so to them it's important. To them it's not an affair. To them it has value, you know, my younger sister. And we never really went against them badly. I wasn't too happy. So a judgment came from me. And the pedestal that I had him on, My mum said to me when she first came into the prison, she said, you're going to find out things about your dad that you don't like. Now, there's things about me that you might not like yourself. So that's just sort of a comment. But to hear it from my mum, but it registered because I'd already got to that point and I'd never told anyone. Yeah. And there was a judgment of love on him. It wasn't a judgment of character. It was a judgment of love. We're meant to love each other, us five. Me, Jean, Karen, Michael and Martin. When Martin died, the family broke. Yeah. So there was all that going on. And now we're in prison together and we're working together. But it was heartbreaking because as much as I loved him, I stopped liking him. Yeah. And I couldn't believe that I'd stopped liking him. And the more I seemed to dislike him, the more I saw things that I didn't like about him. And I think with me and my dad, we were pretty brave guys. But when you have the affairs that we've had, it makes you feel bad about yourself. You become insecure. You lose the bollocks that you need to be a criminal. You feel bad. You feel like you're a coward. You feel like you're a sneak. And that portrays and you become it. So whereas you was brave and strong and wasn't worried about people, and that's a criminal life I'm talking about, we slaughtered ourselves. And he done it, so did I. We was popular guys. We were loved and liked, and I think I got away with it more than him because I did have a lot of goodness in me, and I had a lot of good friends. But I crapped on a few of my friends, and how I managed to get away with it. And even today, I think there's still love, but trust has gone. You know, I was their pal, and I was always because of my dad. All my mates, I was the leader, not the leader, but I always had the move. There was a drug move, there was a this move, there was an that move, there's so many things that we, God willing, if we get to Netflix, there's so much in there.
Yeah,
honestly.
of course, yeah.
There's so much. Right?
It's endless, really, isn't it? It's a lifetime of stories.
I think I've had 9 lives, Mike.
Yeah.
He ain't a bad looking boy, Michael, is he? I bet the birds like him and all, didn't they? You got a fan club, Mike?
It's not something we can talk about on camera, mate.
Okay, all sorry.
I don't kiss and tell.
Okay.
I find kiss and tell. I find kissing and telling to be a slightly distasteful.
Amen. I agree.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
Nor do I.
think a lot of people do it nowadays. Just like, oh, fucked her.
Yeah.
I'll tell you as a mate, like, oh, this gorgeous woman or whatever, but
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of fuck this bird or
Yeah, no, I understand.
hate all of that.
I like that, Mike. That's a good principle. Good boy. Good man. My wife's told me to stop telling him. So anyway, so there's that going on. So then there's the prison, yeah. I come home a year before my dad. He wasn't happy about that. He'd done another year, bless him. And then he'd left my mother and all that went on. And then he eventually went home because my mum loved him. So after his 4th relationship, he went back. Well, my mum was one of them. He went back home. And then long before the dementia took place, it started manifesting itself, I suppose, when he was about. So, how long ago was 204?
17 years ago.
So he would be 90 now, 80, 70, maybe a bit later than 73. When he was about 75, she started seeing it. So I went on a pig farm. Mm. So I'm in this beautiful house. They couldn't sell it. And I lived there. And I made promises and I couldn't keep them, but I was just gone. And I think they didn't have a bad deal. You know, the house wasn't really rentable. There was a few things that they needed to spend money on to make it the value that they wanted. But it was a beautiful, beautiful home. That's where Bob Geldof and the Boomtown Rats come
to record, right? Okay.
To record, yeah. Well, fun that was, Bob. He was all right, Bob. Mm. And it was funny, their keyboard player, as soon as he went in to come into the house, he said, "Is your name Michael?" I thought, yeah, it is. He went, "Oh, I see you speak at a, it was such a small world.
Yeah.
At a prison conference for
wow.
Alfred prisons. It's everywhere. I go everywhere and meet people. It's bizarre. Mm. I was in a village once in the middle of nowhere, a long way away.
In England?
In England.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere. And I walked into a corner shop, which I reckon they must get 5-6 people a day in there. And it was, at the particular time I walked in there, and a mate of mine was there. He went, well, he's not a mate, he used to do the Antique Road show. He went, what are you doing here, Michael? I thought, I can't go nowhere. And I can't.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm popular, it's just, I think if you meet me, you don't forget me.
Well, that's for sure.
But that's an ability you can use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also, you have just talked in front of so many people over the years. It must be insane.
Yeah. I think I was made for it, and I don't mean that egotistic. I think it's my gift. But I've got to get the right words to... That's why my brokenness is... Because it's not broken. It's still fragmented. But I speak from my old brokenness. So it's authentic and real. And all my stories, that you got to remember, I've done all them things. And I didn't really know they existed until I got clean. I just thought it was life. That's what everyone does until people went, are you mad? But anyway, back to Dad. So I had resentment for him. Mum tried to look after him, but she started to say he's not very well. When he was about 78, I would imagine. But where he was tough, he rode it well. He rode it well.
The dementia, he just handled it. Okay, fine.
He rode it well. But he started to... Oh, bless his heart. I can see him now. Bless his heart. So, I suppose 78, 79. But I think it was starting to... Yeah, about that age. But where he'd lost everything, because I lost all the money and all things like that... He'd left my mother and he'd met other women and married them, and I know he loved them. But there was something, when Martin died, lots of people lose their sons, but I think the build-up of see, my mother made my dad's life worth living because she brought, in a very uncanny way, peace to his heart. He was dysfunctional with the ancestral sin, yeah. She covered the wounds. She was his sword carrier. She was his bag carrier. My mum didn't need my dad, but my dad needed my mum. He survived without her, but the quality of life he had with my darling mother, she was a very, very special lady. And so was he, but she was, people would say she's a better person than him, but I don't look at it like that. It's a judgment. She was blessed with a different personality than him. He didn't choose it. And I think because I had what he had, to turn it around, it's like turning a boat around, coming against a big wave. You ain't got time. You got to persevere. And this is real, what I'm telling you. So he's gone... So he gets to the stage where he's living with me at the farm and we're mucking out pigs. Yeah. So, and he weren't frightened of rats, and I was. And we was in the kennels where all the pigs were, and there was rats everywhere. And one of them ran across my foot. He went, you're frightened. He loved it. And he's not well. He's got a man bag on, and there's rats everywhere. And you're talking about two big drug smugglers, two men who's had nice things in life, albeit tarnished, who drove a Range Rover, not that matters, who had a house in Marbella. Who had more than one house in Marbella, or whatever you've had, who smuggled on the oceans, who've seen this and done this. None of it's important. But when you're in a pig pen, yeah, and you're mucking out pigs, talk about the prodigal son, and you're doing that. And he's looked at me over, the rat's run across my hand, and he at my foot, and he's gone, yeah. And this is an old song, and it goes, if they could see us now, that little gang of ours, we're eating fancy dishes, drinking fancy wine, what a hold up, holy cow, they'll never believe it if our friends could see us now. So he starts singing it in his state, I looked at him, right. Anyway, it got quite hard with me and him, and he had, bless you, Brian. And he had 8 minor strokes. And today I'm happy that it happened. I wasn't then. And I looked up, and the demon had ceased. It was gone, what we had. It was a demon that wrapped its tail round the love that we had. and it nearly succeeded. But God in his grace wouldn't allow it. And it's deep, and I can't really say on here, but it was deep. It was very confrontational. There was a lot of love, hatred, but I love him. And when he took him off in the ambulance, he was gone. Oh dear, couldn't walk, he was gone. He'd had the strokes in the night and fell out of bed and smashed his head. I walked in and found him in the bedroom. I thought he'd spilt his coffee, it was thick blood. He didn't feel pain. He cut his finger when he lived with me on the farm, and I took him back to the hospital a week, 10 days later. They rushed him in. He was going to lose his finger. He was hours away from losing it with what he had, and he couldn't feel it, and it freaked him out. It freaked him out. His whole hands was arthritis. What would be the plural of that? Both hands. Arthritic.
Yeah.
And I put him in. I was fortunate to take him to an hospital, and they gave me a private room. We didn't have $1. Yeah, gave me a private room, and he knew I was leaving him there. He played havoc. He kept opening his gown with no clothes on. He said, if you don't get me out of here, I'll get out of here. Trust me, I'll get out of here. The doctors were phoning me. He said, come. And it was a moment's break for me. Mm. He drove the carers mad. He used to grab their bums when they was putting him in the bath. They complained. And then the following day, they sent 2 geezers. He was devastated because they had to bath him. I said, serve you right. I had to get him a not guilty with the social workers because he'd grabbed the carer's backside. And I had to go on a meeting. I said, we can't lose these social workers. I said, you've got to tell the truth. He said, I've never pleaded guilty in my life. That's what he said to me. We're living part of the house was like.
And this is obviously when his head still is. He's
starting to go.
Dementia's quite heavy at this point.
Yeah. No, it wasn't then. It was still kicking in.
Right.
But when he had the strokes, bless his arm. I took him away in an hospital, and I was looking at him like that, and he lifted his head up. He's had 8 minor strokes. He was a tough boy. People thought he was emotionally weak. You know, I thought he was going to struggle in the prison, not because he was frightened of prisons.
Just because he's older.
No, he just loved his freedom. He was spoiled.
Oh, I see.
He was spoiled. No one could outwit him. He didn't like it. So he'd do anything to get his own way. Barring he wouldn't tell tales. Never. So I've looked at him like that. And he's from 8 strokes, minor strokes, he's gone. He can't walk. He never walked again after that day. Bless his heart. And he went like that. He put his head up when I'm at the end of the ambulance, and he went to me, sweet. That's what I thought, my God. So he had that dual weakness. He was so strong but so weak. And when you know someone's strong and you don't realise they're weak, you judge it. Whatever. And you want to... We're great at criticising people. I've learned try not to. He's in a care home for 18 months, right? The first care home I put him in Godston, I ain't got $1, I ain't got no money. And so I start going, we're grafters, me and him. We ain't worried we ain't got no money, and he's going into a care home. First of all, he was in the Crawley Hospital. He drove them mad. And the matron, she was about... I don't care if you're listening, actually. He was out of order with my dad. She made me sign this form. She didn't make me. I just couldn't be bothered. I signed it. But I signed his death warrant nearly. So she said to me one day, he was in the dementia ward in Crawley Hospital, and they wanted funding to take him where they was taking. I said, I ain't got nothing. Anyway, I come back one day. She said, can I have a word with you? So I said, yeah. So she said to me, my husband is a chief. Oh no, she went to me, do you know Eddie Richardson? And I hadn't seen Eddie for years. And I said, yeah, well, why is that? She went, do you know Freddie Foreman? This is the matron in the hospital. I thought she's found out about the old man, because they didn't have a clue who he was. So I said, not that he was anything special, but in that fraternity, he was one of the chaps. And she went to me, I said, well, why? She went, I don't believe it, you ain't got no money. This is the matron in the hospital. They wanted him out. He was driving them nuts, drove them mad. playing up, throwing his food, and then going, what? He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he had a dementia that never took him out the game. So he was 50-50. And in a way, that's not such a great thing because they have an awareness that something is not going on. And then they have that moment when they go into the dementia state of mind that nothing's happening. So life passes them by and they do all their stuff.
They come back and they get really frustrated with themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But his frustration was more because it was 50-50. It weren't 90-10 where you said the lady sung and she came back. He was 50-50 because he knew who I was. He knew what songs I wanted to sing him, and he knew what he was about. But he'd lost the power of ability to manipulate. But bless his heart. So it was a very precious time as well. And so he's gone. She said, I don't believe you haven't got any money. This is the matron in the house. I said, what? She said, well, my husband, I thought she'd Googled or something. She went, my husband is a I don't know what he was at Scotland Yard, but he was a big copper. And she went, I know all about you. This is the matron, but she said it to me quietly. So I said, I don't care what you think anyway. So we get him to a place in Godstone. I went to this place in Godstone. It's beautiful, but it was high-level dementia. There was no equilibrium there. It was just high dementia, and it was nutty. And bless those people. The carers were incredible. So I had to leave the farm. There was something I had to leave. So I drive to the care home. And it's late at night, but I thought I'm going in to see my dad. And I had the code. I go in there, Mike. There's all people running about naked. There's no doctors there. He's in his bed. And as I walk in his bed, he went, what's going on? What's going on? I said, Dad, it's me. Dad, it's me. Dad, it's me. He went, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? It was like a madhouse, bless him. So the following day I said, I want him out. She went, you can't, this social services. I said, I want him out. She said, well, I've examined him and he's at the wrong place. But to get him out is difficult. So I got hold of this geezer who was a Christian. Bless him, he was really good, this fella, but I didn't have no money. I was living off my dad's pension without him knowing. Instead of paying his bill at the care home, he said, you keep it. He knew. He said, don't pay him. It wasn't nice, but I am about 10 grand, which I'll pay him one day. But the government pay it, so it weren't my bill, it's the government bill, but I had the money so I could go and visit him. And I'm talking about, we weren't skin, but this is how bad it got. I'm living off his pension. But he knew. He went, don't let him know, just keep it, right? He knew. I was his boy with nothing. And, wow, that's powerful, all that stuff. I caught him thieving in Tesco's. He went, we need the food, son. Then I got a butcher's round on the farm, delivering pigs and lambs to butchers and having a go myself. Getting half a lamb, half a pig, cutting it all up, putting it in the freezer. We ate like kings. Anyway, I go and see the fella at Dorking and say to him, you know, me dad and all that. He said, oh no, he said, I can't move him because he can't walk. I said, what about if he could walk? He said, I could move him. I said, okay, would you come with me? So he went, yeah. So I get out of this little van and I drive him to the care home in Godstone. So I'm in the room with him and my dad and the geezer. So I said to the old man, can you stand up? He knows what I'm doing. He went, of course I can. He hasn't walked for 6 months. His legs are like paper, yeah? So I said, listen, you've got to stand up. He said, don't worry about that, son. I said, I can't remember exactly, but I can imagine this is the conversation. I said, if you stand up, you're out of here. He went, leave it to me. The geezer could not believe it. He weighed 7 stone. He's in a wheelchair. His legs were like cardboard, but he had strong calves. He went, I'll do it, son. I said, okay. So I said to the fella, he's going to do it. He said, he ain't going to stand up. He said, he ain't making it. I said, he is. I said, wait and see. So I said, stand. And he went like that. He got his arse off the chair. And I went, wallop. I put my hand round his back like I was a ventriloquist, and I stood him up. I went, "Is that all right?" He couldn't. He was like that. I was holding him. I said, "Just stay still for a minute." And he was like that. It's me and him again fighting the enemy. And this fella looked at me with compassion, and he became my friend. He said, "Let him go." I said, I ain't letting him go till you let. She said, "Put him down." I said, "No." I said, "You all right?" He went, "Yeah, we need to get out of here." So the fella said, "Don't worry," and give him the great. He come still at it with dementia and care homes. A fella said, "Look, he shouldn't be going, but I'm putting my neck on the line, and I'm going to say I see him stand." I said, "Thank you, mate." Got him to this care home in Reigate, and it was wonderful. And it was at about 20 people there. This one had about 250, whatever. And it was heavy dementia, but there was also some clarity there as well. There was 50-50. And they fell in love with him. And he, from being a very aggressive man in this care home, dementia makes you aggressive, he became very quiet and nice. And there's a mate of ours called Herbie, and Herbie's quite a big boy. He's about 20 stone. And there was this lady who used to sit next to my dad, and they have dolls and things like that. And they used to sit my dad next to this. I mean, she must have weighed 20 stone with a doll. And when I used to go there, she'd go to me and all that. So I used to sit there, and when he was in dementia state, he thought it was our mate Herbie. And it weren't, it was the lady. So, but then normally he'd know it weren't Herbie. It was 50-50 all the time. So he said to me one day, "Herbie's here now with me, ain't you, Herb?" So they must have been flirting with each other or something like that. She turned around and went, "Hello," really nice. So I thought, I can't spoil his time and say, "That ain't Herbie." So he kept on, and I said, "Listen, Dad," I said, "it's not Herbie." "Herbie?" Yeah, I'm getting all this. So there was funny times, and then there were other times, and then he had the room right at the end because we had no money, and but he was in a 5-star place. How we got there was God's blessing, and they fell in love with him, all the staff, and then when they started to find out he was a naughty boy, they loved him even more, and he was like the orchestrator of peace in there, and he goes. When he was clear, he goes, "Son, pray." Anyway, after about 6 months, they said he's got 4 days to die. So I said, okay, which I was pleased about. He went on another 12 months, and I used to say, "Listen, do you want to get out of here?" So he said, "Yeah." I said, "You've got to go home." He said, "What, to Epsom? Shall I go out to Kansas to see my sister?" I said, "No, you got to go home." He went, "Where?" I said, "Upstairs. You're going home to the Lord." "Oh, don't say that. I ain't ready to go yet." I said, "Daddy, please." He weighed 6 stone. We all got involved. We used to have parties down there. I mean, his other wives came, and they were great with him. Everyone was great with him. And then in the middle of it, Jean dies, my mum. And he knew, but I couldn't tell him. And the doctor said, "If you tell him today, he'll forget by tomorrow. So you'll have to tell him at least 20 times before he remembers. So what you want to do is distress him badly." He adored her. He adored her. He couldn't eat. Had to force feed him. He had pneumonia. And he went on and on. And the day we buried my mum, a guy called Jamie, he's my son-in-law's father. And we didn't see eye to eye all the time. And he's a nice lad. We've had our ups and downs. But he lived near the care home. And he had the decency to take the flower from my mum's grave and put it in my dad's room. And I never knew he'd done that. And when I went to visit my dad the following day, I see my mum's flower there. And I thought, what a lovely thing for a person to do. So he took part of my mum's funeral to my dad's care home. And my dad used to say, "What's happened to your mum?" I say, "No, she's all right. She's gone home." "What do you mean, gone home?" And that's what I used to say. And I was dying to tell him, but they wouldn't allow it. Anyway, he deteriorated. I said, "Take him off his medication." And they went, no. I said, "Take him off his medication. I want him to go. It's not fair to him." They took him off his medication. They said he'd last a week. He went on another 4 months. He never started to say, "Bri." Anyway, where he never went, and I was there for constantly 18, and not only me, loads of people, but I was the boy. I was his boy. Out of his 7 children, and he loved us all the same. He wanted me there for some unknown reason, and I reacted because I think it was a God moment. It was a timing moment, and everyone was busy. People was looking for me because I owed money everywhere, and bless these people. I'm so sorry what happened, to be honest with you, and one day it'll be put right. There's some lovely people, but I think when God separates you from something, it's brutal, because if you cut, when you prune a rose. If that rose it was alive, although they are alive, I bet they go, "Oh, that hurt." Or you prune a tree, it's severe, isn't it? You think, "Where's my lovely tree?" It's all like, but it's cut. And in about a year, you go, "God, don't they look lovely?" So that's what it felt like, losing all my friends and my money and things like that. Or separating, let's just say. And God will bring back. He sifts the wheat out from the chaff and the chaff from the wheat. Anyway, get to the point. So Dad's in trouble, get backwards and forward. I decided to go to Spain because my son-in-law had been fantastic, my son-in-law, Perry. He helped me a lot with my dad. He really loved my dad. And my other son-in-law, Dave Flowers, he had fun with Brian. But he was a little bit after Perry, and I got a wonderful family. I really have. But Perry was special to me. Perry was sort of special to my dad. He was a bit like me dad, actually. And anyway, he had his hair cut. He took him to Brighton, and because he was familiar with him, and so they moved out to Spain. Perry and my daughter Beth, and they've got a business company. They've got a business company. They've got a building refurbishment business. And so because I knew everyone in Spain, they needed a lawyer, they needed all sorts. So I fly out with them. The day I arrive, I'm not out with my daughter, with my son-in-law. The day I arrive was a Thursday. On the Friday, I get a phone call from my younger sister, Alice. God, my arse is sore.
You're right. Do you want to stand up and move about for a minute?
You know what it is? When I've lost a lot of weight, my bone comes through the backside a little bit.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So he's gone. So I'm out in Spain, and Alice, she gives me a call, and she said, "Daddy's not well." I said, "He'd be all right." She said, "No." She said, "And he keeps asking for you. Where's Michael?" So I phoned up the home. They went, "Sorry to say this to you. Now, I've been saying to the doctor," he went, "He'll be all right, he'll be all right," every week for 18 months. And the doctor told me that sometimes when the people they leave love, they decide to die because they don't want anyone to see them dying. Whether that was the case or not. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know. But this is what happened. It's so easy to fly back from Spain. So easy. So I tried to get a flight back. They said he's got 4 days. So I thought, I'll fly into Gatwick. He was at the home in Reigate. I'll stay at the home for a day or two. I'd sleep in his room if I had to. I mean, it weren't a great, nice smelling place, but it was me dad. I'd have nut down and stayed there. And that was what I was intending to do. The following morning, I couldn't get a flight for love nor money. It's easy to get flights to Spain. They quoted me £800 to fly into City Airport. Anyway, the following morning, wake up, get one for £3.5. It's £100, £1.5, easy. That's a bit odd. And I'm going on the Monday. They said he's got till the Wednesday. So I thought I've got a day or two with him. I'll get me ticket. I phoned him up on the Saturday. And she said, "I'm really sorry, Michael, but he's got 2 hours to live." Whoa. How they know, I don't know. I said, "What?" So my ex-wife was round the corner, Beth was round the corner. I said, "Go round there and sit with him." And they're both very game characters, but they start off with fear. No, I said, "Just go round there and hold his hand." Now, the mobile phone didn't work well in the room. It was 70-30 against. 70% of the time, you wouldn't have got it. So you did have a bit of a, but you'd lose the signal. It was one of them things, you know. It was chancy. The lady at the care home, well, most of them people, I just want to give a plug to them there, and I can't remember the name of it. Terrible, you know, but they were lovely people. And one of the ladies' names was B. She follows me on Instagram, and she's a lovely lady. She is. She loved my dad, and I thought if only they knew. So they tell me he's going to go. So there's nothing I can do but just let Tracy and Beth deal with it. Excuse me. But anyway, the lady calls me and says, phone the room. So they put the mobile in the room on the windowsill, and I phone it. And he's waiting for me to die. It's true. So I phone it. And they say my voice went, all right, Dad. And he's going. He ain't got. So the lady shouts out, speak to him, Michael. She was about to give him the jollop to help him. And what do they call you to help your diets? And
Bit of morphine.
Morphine, yeah. So if they overdose you on morphine, you go.
Yeah, you do go, yeah.
Yeah. So she was ready to do that. And bless his heart. So she went, so I said, all right, Bri. And I can sort of remember what I said to him. So I run him through our life, and I told him how much I loved him. Now, there's been deep resentments here, yeah. I never stopped loving him. I could have spent £1 million on therapy with my dad, and I wouldn't have got to where we got to in the 4 minutes, 48 seconds, exactly. So I'm with Perry in the car, and we're coming out of a mountain region, tricky with the signal. So I said, he pulls up, he didn't care, he pulled up right on the Carretera, Perry, but he said, go on. So I sat and said to him how much I loved him. I thanked him for everything that he'd ever done with me. And I said, and don't worry, don't be frightened, Bri. I said, you'll see Mummy, because Mummy died 5 months ago. So I got to tell him. He responded by, yeah, and he stuck his tongue out of his mouth. And Beth shouts out, he's poked his tongue, so he heard me. And then the woman shouts out, pray. Now you're talking about two hardened criminals. I shared the city's funeral, and they was all there, Foreman, they was all there. And I shared it at his funeral. And I just said, in the name of Jesus. And I said, don't worry, Dad. And I called the angels. I said, just take him. And as I said, don't be frightened, Dad. Father God, Holy Spirit, come and take him. And as I said, take him, she shouts out, he's gone. When I went to see her, it was unbelievable. It absolutely 4 minutes, 48 seconds. I shared what was in my heart. It healed every pain, the father-son thing. I'd have died for him. I don't know if I'd have been there to the death with him, like it would be for me. And it ended so beautiful. And we was praying. I was praying for him. And I had no guilt or shame about when he died. In fact, that's why I believe in God. They're the situations that make me believe in something greater than myself.
There's almost a relief, isn't there?
It was a relief.
When he passed.
But if this hadn't have happened, that time on prayer and in the thing, I'd have carried guilt and shame. I know I would have done. But I didn't. He was gracious. God was, and so was my dad. And
what do you think he'd think to what you're doing at the moment?
There'd be a part of him, because all his mates have wrote books, he'd go, you mug.
Showing off?
No, because it's not, that's the only...
He might look at it like that.
No, he wouldn't, because he knows the story in the books about Jesus. Mm. If I wrote a crime book, if I'd have just wrote a crime book, he'd have given it to me. Making films and writing books, we don't do that. But a lot of his friends do. And I'm not sure how he'd be with it today, but he used to run away, not because of the celebrity or showing off. He just didn't want his name out there. He didn't want any glory, my dad. He didn't want the notoriety. But he would like what I'm doing because it's about a faith journey. But if I just put a crime book down, he'd go, what are you doing? You can't do that. So it's been written quite cleverly, that. to make a film, documentary, which I want to do both. And you wait, I'm going to do it, by the grace of God. He would support it because he knows where I am today. If you'd have asked me that, if I'd have wrote that 20 years ago, he'd have clumped me. He wouldn't have had it. We don't write books, son. So because it's a faith book then. So, but the end of the story of him dying, when I prayed for him, as I said, take him, they said he's gone. I went back to see the nurse or the matron or whatever she was. And she said, I've worked in this industry for 30 years. She said, I've seen deaths most weeks, most months. She said, but Michael, something entered that room. I have never, ever witnessed a man who was in so much pain find relief when you prayed. Wow. And they're talking about a lady who works in a care home for 30 years. She said, it really convinced me that something happened in that room. She said, I've never experienced anything like it.
Wow.
It's incredible. Yeah. She was at the funeral, and I was going to ask her to stand up, but I couldn't. But I mentioned it. And when he died, they took a photograph of him, because this is quite funny, yeah? And they sent me the photograph. He looked diabolical. Something must have smashed in him as he died, like a blood must have broke. His face was dark and that. He looked awful. I've got the photographs. Anyway, they take him to Reigate morgue or whatever they call them. And my sister said, oh, we're getting buried in Epsom and all that. And they took him to a place in Reigate. And I thought, I ain't having him buried down there. So I flew into England, phoned up a lady I know because she'd buried my mother, a New Zealand girl. I said, do us a favour. I even asked for a discount. I said, because there's two of them. She said, I've never known anyone who asked for a discount. The funeral parlour. So I said, I've never known it. I said, give us a discount. I got 100 quid off. But I wanted about a bag of sand off, £1,000. Anyway, she's gone, I said, do us a favour. Chelsea funeral parlour it was. I said, would you go and get my dad? So she went, where is he? I said, he's in the morgue in Reigate. They're going to debarm him and bury him down in Epsom. I want him up here. She went, leave it to me. So I never told anyone. Not that they was fussed. I think I might have told me sister, but I just done what I wanted to do. And I took his funeral over in the grace and love that I thought I should do. And I went and got him, and I took him up to the New Zealand lady at Chelsea. And I'll end it. It took me about another minute. It's quite a lovely story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I went up there. So I said, they went and got him. They'd been there for about 6 days because I was come back and had to do the paperwork and all that. And I was his next of kin. I stayed in Spain. I wasn't too fussed. I wanted to chill. I was fussed about him, but I thought, it'd be all right. So I come back. I used to phone him. I said, he's all right. Yeah, but we need to move him and all that. I said, I'll be there because I had to sign the paper. So I went back, not because I didn't care, because I really did care. It was about I had to think about this. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had to think about it. I had to think about, I had trouble out on the streets. I arrived back. So I call her, she goes and picks him up, I sign the paperwork, and they debarm him, whatever they do, all that stuff. So I thought, God, it's about 10 days now. I thought, I bet he don't look too pretty. So I went into Marks and Spencer. I threw all his clothes away. In the care home, my mother, they were beautiful suits. Give them all away. His lovely crocodile shoes and all that. So I thought, I'm going to go and buy him. So I thought, what should I buy him? So I went into Marks. And I thought, that he won't mind. He'd probably have the young, but I'll go to Marks. So I bought him a white pair of chino trousers and a lovely, like, beautiful orange sort of shirt it was. And I picked up these yellow pants because he used to wear yellow pants when I was a kid and I hated them. They used to frighten me. And he had a right big pair of bollocks, my dad. So I'm at the counter at Marks. So I'm looking at the lady and I don't hear his voice, but I hear inside of me, I don't like them pants. And I thought, is that me? So I started to cry. So the lady went, what's the matter? I said, oh, it's my dad and he don't like these pants. So she thinks she went, what? I said, I don't like these pants and all that. She said, well, just change them. Are you crying? Or I said, because he's dead. So she went, well, how do you know he won't? I said, don't matter how I know he won't. She comes, I'll get him his pants. Give him to the lady, New Zealand lady. They dress him, yeah. Now, it's probably been about 10 to 12 days or something like that. No one wants to see him because of how bad he looked. He was 6.5 stone, yeah. None of the kids, none of the grandchildren, they loved him. And funny enough, I found a picture of him today when he fell out of his bed. Even in there, he's got a big black eye with a thing over it. So I said to the lady, so my Lily, my middle daughter, she said, I'll come with you, Dad. So I said, all right, and we meet in the Chelsea funeral place. And I kid you not, I walk into the chapel of rest, and I thought I was going to break down. He had a smile on his face. He looked like he'd just come off the beach. All the barnet back, all of what they do to him, he looked. I mean, I can't show you the photographs because they're personal, but if you see the before and after, if you'd have seen the before, you wouldn't have gone. The after, and he had a smile on his face. And as I walked in there with a New Zealand bird, my Lily burst out crying. As I looked at him, I went, "You saucy bastard."
And that was it.
And that was it.
And that was it.
And she kept him for me there. And it was lovely. He had a great funeral. They all turned up. And I got up and told that story, and we prayed. And that was it for Bri.
Would you mind quickly telling us the Reggie Kray football tournament story?
Not at all.
Because I love it. And I'm sure you'll bring it to life. But in the book, it was fascinating, especially the fact that what he said to you at the end.
Yeah. So Reg and I got to have a little bit of a build-up. Reg was sort of dad. He weren't my dad's friend, but Reg knew my dad. Do you know what I got the other day? A mate of mine was in a mental institution in Epsom, and he was writing to Ronnie Kray, and I've got the letter on my phone. And we can do something with it if you want. And Ronnie Kray from Dartmoor sent this letter to my friend John, yeah, and in it he mentions my dad. Say hello to Brian Emmett for us, and the guy I haven't seen. This letter must be 40 years old. And his nephew's got it, who's found me through Sins of Fathers. He said, "Are you Michael Emmett?" Blah, blah, blah. I said, "You've got me, blah, blah, blah." He's about your age, this young man. And he said, "I've got something for you." He said, "Here's a letter with your dad." And he sent it me from Ronnie, sent from Dartmoor prison to my mate John, kept in his sort of private things. The nephew gives it, and he sends it a picture on the phone about Brian. And I thought, well, that's sweet, you know. So it's all stuff that I've got.
Yeah.
But anyway, Reggie. So we wind up in Maidstone, and there's a number of stories about Reg with the Sex Pistols. You don't know that story. There's all stuff. There's stuff about Pink Floyd, and there's the stuff about the football. You want the football one, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right.
If that's all right, yeah.
Absolutely. So Maidstone in 1996 was just the end of old school in prisons, I think. It was like the council flats. All the chaps were there. There was no trouble. It was a genuine place of...
What do you mean old school?
Well, my dad was old school.
Oh, you mean the old generations?
I've got an old...
The Krays, your lot, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
But not only the Krays. It felt...
Well, when you said fraternity earlier, that's what you mean by that, right?
The old school fraternity.
Yeah, that crowd of people, which was who?
Ronnie Kray, Reggie Kray, Freddie Foreman, the twins, Eddie Richardson, my dad, Arthur Satie, I'll take that last name off, Bobby McHugh. You know, the list is endless. And all the Marbella people, they was called old school. So I think it originally... You ain't got a tissue, have you?
We can get you one.
No, don't worry about it. I can get through it. It's only the broken nose coming through. So, as long as my uter ain't dirty...
That's fine.
It ain't fine. So anyway, so there's that connection. Reg had wrote about Brian in his book. And... but I wasn't sort of impressed with Reg. You know, I've said it before about his notoriety. That went over my head because...
But you were in it, like you said. You knew these people from childhood, right?
Yeah, I did, but there was still a time and a place where I was impressionable. I was impressed by him, yeah. But Reg, and although he was a strong, fit man, he had shrunk. Character, Reggie Kray, they say what he done and what he didn't do and all that. But there was a side of Reg that I believe that it was like the blind leading the blind. And I'm not saying he shouldn't take responsibility for his actions, but to do 33 stretch was a liberty. But the pen is mightier than the sword. It's over Lord Boovey with Ron, you know, and I think they were more like celebrities, dangerous celebrities, I do, the twins. But I never knew Ron. So I met Reg on the stairs. He said, "Hello, Brian, how are you?" And we got on. He used to wear a big cross round his neck. And there was a spiritual side to Reg, you know, there definitely was. And there was always drawings and pictures and paintings, and there's so many stories I've got which are so funny. But this is the one. We used to pay into wing football, yeah? So it was 3 wings, so Winnie used to stay on. World Wing, Medway, and I forget the name of the other one. So every Saturday, and you got Winston Silcock there. You got so many people there. Winston was, he was a lovely boy, Winston. But they said he killed a cop, and they say he never. He got out of it in the end, but he'd done a long time. So I believe he was innocent, Winston. But it was all there. I would say, you know, top of the league, premier criminals. But all sort of, there was no rivalry, there was no sort of violence there. There was the influx of, you know, all sorts of nationalities. You know, Dutch, Jamaican, Indian, English, Chinese, Thai, it was all there. And all there for the same reason, because we'd done big crimes. No short sentences. There was people doing a lot longer than me, 30 years, 20 years. It was Joe Martin, the double lifer, Reggie Kray. It was a number of, who was that lovely East London fella, what was his name? I forget his name, he was a corker. So I decided to do an over 45s, because we was playing every week, yeah. There was all Indian guys who'd been nicked for smack, doing 10s and 20s and 30 years. Used to walk about with their turbans on, and they were lovely guys. So we have a game of football. The football pitch in Maidstone, it's near the outer wall. There was a swimming pool there, and it was the outer wall. And you could see the tops of the houses, yeah. And I'm not sure if they could see it, I doubt very much, but they could see part of it. But we're a road depth away from them, breadth away, and we're having this game of football. And I don't want to sort of shop the business about what people do in prisons. That's not kiss and tell. But there was a few things that made people light-hearted, put it that way. So we're having fun. And you got Reggie Kray, Joe Martin, Brian Emmett. There's all these sort of old criminals and a few youngsters. Lifers there who we know. So it was a mixed bunch. We'll have the game of football. So there's a lot of cheering going on. And the longer the game goes on, the merrier they're getting, because they're slightly misbehaving. And they're knocking each other off the ball. Well, Reg, he was bow-legged. I reckon he could have caught the ball in between his knees. Yeah. Anyway, they're knocking him over, he's getting up, and everyone's shouting things. It was great. I was the ref. So someone shouts out, "Do it for Ronnie, Reg." All that dialogue is going on. It's colossal, yeah. Now, this is not to decry Reg, but he had a partner in there. You know, you could call it a boyfriend, but I would call it more than that. I would call it a companion who he loved. Is that wrong? Who am I to judge? Young Bradley. So there was companionship. You know, there's no judgment, but it was a reality. And so he's obviously, whatever, bless you. He's had a kiss and a cuddle in there, put it like that.
Yeah.
So it goes to penalties, yeah? So I say to the kid in goal, I say, dive to the left. No, sorry, I say dive to the right. So Reg, he wouldn't have got through a breathalyzer, Reg, put it like that.
So everyone's hammered at this point.
Well, sort of. I mean, I don't want to put it out there, but you can't kiss and tell. But, you know, the breathalyzer, we'd have all lost our licences, put it like that. So, and every face in London's there. Some really, really, really good people. call them dangerous, call them bank robbers, call them drug smugglers, but the quality of the heart, the camaraderie, the friendship, the loyalty, and no one was violent. There was no one getting violence. We were locked away, doing our time because we'd done the crime, and we was having a bit of fun. We weren't causing trouble, and it was a blind eye. And I don't want it like because we're on the TV or the newspapers to kiss and tell about prisons, but you're going to understand what goes on. We're criminals. What, we're going to sit there and put our hands under our asses and be good boys. But I'm not saying we was doing bad things. We was having fun. Yeah. So, it was a good nick. It was amicable. It was kind. Funny stuff. So... it's the penalties, and Reggie's going to take the last penalty.
By the way, Reg Kray at this point, he's quite old. He's quite frail. Yeah, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it was in 1996. He was old and frail, but he was old and strong. He still had that wily muscle. He could still fling a little white. He used to go on the pads, and he had his speed ball. But he wouldn't have been a fit. Yeah, you wouldn't think, oh, there's Reggie Kray, I'm frightened. You know, it weren't like that. They was only little, the twins.
Yeah.
They weren't big guys. But they were boxers and they had that sort of thing. But he'd been in prison 30 years. It don't show on your shoes, you know what I mean? So, my grandson, and I'm not talking about my 13-year-old, I'm talking about my 1-year-old, would have kicked the ball harder. But it's rigged. The game's rigged. So they shout out again, as he goes to take the penalty, his little bow legs. I wish I could stand up. He was like that. He was like a weeble.
You can stand up. You've got a lapel mic if you want to stand up.
No, I'm all right.
Yeah.
So they shout out from the touchline, do it for again. Do it for Ronnie, Reg. Great dialogue. You know, talking about the twins. And Reg turns round like that. And he goes, our spirits are entwined. Come on, Ronnie. And he runs up to this ball. But it was like slow motion. And I've told the kid which way to dive. So I think I had to blow it over the line, right? So he's run like that. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
So he ain't kicked it well. The top of his shoes hit it. So it's bobbled. And the goalkeeper is waiting to dive. He's rigged. And he knows what way to go. But he can't dive too early. We all know what it's about. We want to make it look good for Reg. So he's on one leg waiting to... He dives. The ball goes in. So they put Reg on their shoulders. And his bollock comes out. And it's on the geezer's Gregory on his neck. And this is not to decry you, Reg, but you could see Reg moving about. His orchestra's on the geezer's neck. His eyes,
his orchestra. That's such a good way to put it.
His eyes are flittering, and we start singing. We are the champions, my friend. And I suppose it was, I might be exaggerating and saying it was 100 people, but it was more than 30 or 40. We was, maybe that, I can't remember. So Reg is like that. We are, and Reg is going, he was being adored. And he had a tear in his eye. And he turned around and he looked at me. He said, Michael, this is the happiest day of my prison sentence. And I knew he meant it. So I don't want to tarnish it with a bollock and neck story, which is funny.
But it is funny.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we walk him into the thing, into the wing. Do you know this bit? Do you want me to carry on?
No, I don't know this bit.
This
no,
is
go
colossal,
ahead.
this bit. And there must have been a protocol, right, that Reg and Ronnie and Charlie could speak to each other whenever they liked. I think it was an unwritten rule. So because he was mutton...
Who's Charlie, sorry?
Charlie Kray was the brother.
Okay, fine.
Ron had died by now.
Fine.
And God bless you, Reg. And so, because he was mutton, he used to have glasses. He said, my Ronnie bought me these. They were £1,000, he used to say. And what they used to have, and there's another story when he said I prayed for him. And he took his glasses off. He said, Mike, he was drunk on the wing. He said, Michael Emmett prayed for me. I was so embarrassed. My toes were curling in me. I hid behind the door going, he went, Michael Emmett's prayed for me on the fours. I don't need my glasses no more. He fell over. He couldn't see a thing. He was as blind as a bat, honestly, and deaf as a post. So he had these things, and they used to have the microphone in here. So
for his hearing aid, yeah.
So he could, they were bifocals like that, the glasses. So he used to see through them like that, put them on his ear, so the hearing aid was there, so he could see and hear with his glasses. My Ronnie bought these, he used to say, £1,000 they are, Michael. Put them on, Roger, and you'll be able to see. So we go back on the wing, and where he was mutton, deaf, there used to be a sort of a round thing that they used to attach it to the phone in the probation so he could hear. So he's gone. Now, Charles Bronson, do you know who Charles Bronson is? So there was 2 Iranian terrorists. I think they was Iranian. And it took her either a plane or hostages. So Charlie Bronson, that day we've had the football game, has taken the 2, I believe this to be, well, it is true, I'm not making it up. He'd taken the hostages, I'm not sure if that bit's right, but he'd taken hostages, yeah? And he'd done what he'd done, and he got them in the cell, and he'd done what he had to do. So he took the terrorist hostage the same day we've had the football. So there's a lockdown in Belmarsh. So Charles Bronson gets the hostages, and he puts them in the cell. They do all sorts of things. They put toilet over themselves, but he ain't got a cell now. I'm taking the terrorist hostages and just takes them. And I think people are a little bit, wow, here we go. And he locks himself in the cell. So I weren't there, but that's what they say. And it ain't allegedly, it's true. So, but we don't know that. So we go back onto the wing in Maidstone after. It's like the inebriated brute it was. What's that restaurant called? There was a restaurant. The Drunken... Anyway, that's what it was like. So we're all a little bit... I weren't, but... Oh, yeah, I was. Blah, blah, blah. Go on the wing. I want to speak to Charlie. Reg has gone. And there's about 10 of us from the football game. Yeah. So... Oh, the prison officer, Make It Right Ray, I think his name was. He said, all right, Reg. And it was, I remember thinking, well, he can speak to Charlie whenever he likes. So I think it was something was written, you know, after 33 years, it was like a little treat maybe for him, you know. So they phoned up Belmarsh. And where the probation office was, it went in a half circle, something if I remember right. And there was a window. Now you had to go in, but Reg is taking the phone through the window, and we're all behind Reg. He said, listen to this, boys. They put the thing on the phone. You couldn't make this up. So he phoned to get through to Belmarsh, and they said, oh, it's Reg, he wants to speak to Charlie. So the prison's gone, we're on a lockdown. You know, blah, blah, blah. Reg went, get my Charlie. Anyway, they go and get Charlie. Now, Charlie was the most loveliest man. He was a very, very nice man, Charlie. You know, what's that saying? Cast the first stone, sort of thing. So we put Charlie, ye without sin cast the first stone. Charlie was a good boy. And when you say that, people go, it's the twins, and they don't like it. Charlie and Reg, I didn't know Ron, they was all right. And I knew Charlie well from the outside. Well, not well, but yeah. Another story there, loads of them. So, go and get my Charlie. So after a little while, Charlie was a little bit... I think Ronnie and Reggie used to tell him what to do, but I don't think he used to respond out of fear. I think he used to respond because he knew he could trigger something. So he always spoke quietly. Although Reg spoke with a lisp. He spoke like that. Hello, Michael. You all right? You wouldn't believe it. I'd love to get a sound. Try and get a sound of Reggie's voice, because you won't believe it's their voices. They go, hello, how are you? You okay? So they both used to speak. So he goes and gets Charlie. A bit drawn out. So all of a sudden, no, I'm all right. So he gets Charlie. So he says, all right, Charlie. And we're all listening with the thing. So Charlie's gone, Reg. He said, look, I can't really speak on the phone. He said, because Charlie Bronson's taken a terrorist hostage in here. He said, we're on a lockdown. He said, you're lucky to get me. So Reg went, don't worry about that, Charlie. So he went, what's the matter? He said, I've just been involved with a shootout. So Charlie went, what do you mean a shootout? He went, a fucking penalty shootout. and put the phone down. It's a true story.
That's amazing.
It's fantastic. Isn't it?
It's amazing. Yeah, yeah. So you knew Bronson as well?
No, never knew Charlie.
No.
I think Brian knew a bit of him, but I think, I didn't know him. No, I didn't know him.
Because he's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's done it.
Done the longest stretch ever. It's like he wants to be in there.
I don't know. I mean, bless Charlie Bronson. He's like, again, whether it was Charlie Bronson or you, Michael, we're all human beings with defects of character. We're rightly and wrong, but no matter what, there's no judgment. If they say the man's a bad man, that's out of order. He might be
What do you mean by that?
Well, because he might be a good man, he might be a bad man. It doesn't matter what he is. He served so many years in prison for his crime. Yeah, so
But he's considered a violent man.
no, absolutely. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
But he's done his time. So I'm not saying, they say a lot of people, well, they got away with it. The twins never got away with it. Charlie Bronson never got away with it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if there was any judgment on a character, whatever they'd done wrong, they took right on the chin. And so my admiration for him is not in an agreement with it's not an agreement or disagreement. It's whatever they've done, they've paid the price.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into sort of sex crimes because there's no judgment here. But when you think about, and I'm not one of those people that go, oh, look, they've done this. Because there's, on a sex crime, do we judge?
Did they get targeted?
The twins?
No, people who do sex crimes and paedophiles.
Yeah, of course they do. But
They get beaten up a lot?
Well, they don't come near you. They're segregated.
Oh, really? Because people are just willing to kill them, basically?
Yeah, because a lot of it, I mean, places like Broadmoor, I mean, you could read it in the newspapers about Peter Sutcliffe, what used to happen to him, and, the Moors murderer, what happened to him. I used to find her quite intriguing, that Maya Inley. I used to have nightmares about her. I really, as I got older and as I was a man of God in prison, I wanted to meet her. And I stood outside a cell that she was in, and I said to the vicar, let me meet her.
Really?
I just was intrigued by her. I used to be so frightened of her as a kid. I had a nightmare about her, I did. But I wanted to look. Myra Hindley. But I wanted to look at her.
What was she famous for again?
The Moors murders.
Yes.
It was a gruesome. This is not a judgment, because whatever judgment I have is in my heart. So I'm not about to slag her down or be a do-gooder. So whatever she done, she paid the price. Horrendous what she done. Horrendous what she done. But who knows why? Who knows if? Those poor children. But there was something about me. I didn't want to say anything to her. I didn't want to...
Just wanted to see her in the flesh.
I wanted to look in her eyes.
Yeah.
Because she freaked me out when I was a kid. And I stood outside her cell. I went to a woman's prison to do a talk. And her cell, it was like as if she had her own little thing in the middle of the yard. And I'm not sure if she was on her own in there or there were other inmates, but it was a very small, about the size of a big garden shed. No, bigger than that. Like two council flats, or two little flats together. And a window was there. And I was moving through the prison with the prison officers to be taken out the gate. And we had to stop there. And the vicar said to me, that's Myra Hindley's cell there. And I went, what? So I had my back against the wall. And I said, take me in there. He said, there's no way you'd get in there. I said, are you frightened? He said, no, it just doesn't matter. So I asked him what if...
Yeah, why would you not get in there?
Well, because of the crime, they'd think you're a attacker.
Right, okay.
But...
How old was she then?
It was a few years previous. I suppose this is about 15 years ago. But, I've got stories which I don't really want to talk about right now on here about the sex offenders in prison. And it's something that, one, I find extremely distressful for victims. But as I've got older and sort of believed in stuff, there's a consequence for everything. But it intrigued me. If I come away from the gruesome acts, if I don't include that in it, If I include that in it, then it's just a judgment that you're a dirty, rotten pig. Yeah. But then I got into, because of my own addictions, and I'm not going to be something like that, I used to think...
Sorry, Mike, will you come forward a bit?
I used to think, I wonder what it is. We've got to be careful what we do with this stuff.
Yeah,
Maybe
fine.
we keep this on our own.
No, fine. I mean, you're more just telling us
Yeah.
right now, yeah.
And I just feel that there's not a sympathy, because it's not a word that you can attach to that crime. But
I feel like you're interested in the psychology and the dysfunction of it. What's the damage that's driven them to that? I think a lot of people find that.
Yeah.
It's not like agreed, obviously not condoning it or anything, but the fact that how do people get to that? Because it's deep rooted, isn't it? Something of that description in particular. You could even say a murder could be completely out of character and random. It can be. Some people do that, but the sex offender, the paedophilic thing is so deep rooted.
you can't. I'm going to tell you something now. But we're.
Shall I?
Yeah, turn that off.
Shall I stop this?
Yeah.
Well, before you do, yeah, we've done those. There's just one question I'll ask for the recording at least.
How big was my dad's bollocks?
Yeah. Okay, two questions. How big were your dad's bollocks, and how big were Reggie's?
Well, I think with me dad's, I think if you go back in our generation, have you ever seen the back of an elephant? How their bollocks hang? Well, I think
I'm going to show you a funny video.
There might be an elephant related to us. That was the length of my dad's bollocks. And I've got them as I've got older, and they're sore. You can't catch them. And the other one was how big was Reg.
Yeah.
Well, I think Reg had a 62-year-old bollock that had got longer over the years because they seemed to sag. And I can't remember exactly, but it was a bit pimply and grey hairs. Don't use that one.
No, don't use it. That's hilarious. The last question is: Are you a happy man now?
Yeah. So, what did you determine as happy? Is it momentarily happiness? I could be happy right now. So right now I am. Am I happy about myself? Am I happy about my life? There's a quotation in the Bible, and it says, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." So, and it's not about passing it off. But I do believe that there's a spirit greater than myself that brings something to me. But I'm a lot better than I was last week. I'm a lot better than I was 5 years ago. I'm a lot better than I was 10 years ago. And do I have moments of clarity? Yeah. Do I have moments of peace? Yeah. Do I have moments of joy? Yeah. But I think happy is a word that I'm not sure what happy means, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think some people think happy is this perfection of an internal peace or whatever it may be, but that's not it for me.
No.
I don't.
What is it for you?
Well, I think I might have asked this in another one of our sessions, but I often ask people what happiness is to you. I say, what is happiness, or are you happy, depending on how we phrase it or what's appropriate for the person. For me, it's definitely being surrounded by the people I love in the best environment possible.
Lovely, yes, lovely. Yeah, that's
and that doesn't even have to be perfect. Not every ounce of it will be perfect, but it's the environment of the people.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.
Brilliant. So, Mike, first of all, obviously, after all we've done all the different episodes, so thank you very much for doing it. We really appreciate that, and I want to put that on camera because that's good. I'm really happy you've sort of become part of the Babylonia story.
Absolutely,
so
I love you guys. Two lovely men, Sammy Boy and Michael. I would like to say thank you very much. I tell you what, I want to say thank you. One for Sam for being such a gentleman, and you being so trustworthy and being kind.
My pleasure.
It's been great, and I pray to God that you become the English Joe Rogan, and I want that on camera.
Okay. Well, that's one of the missions, yeah. So
bless you, humbly. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Son.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bless you. Bless you, son. Mwah.